Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the February 26th meeting of the East Long Meadow School Committee. Call the meeting to order 4:01. This meeting is being both audio and video recorded. And I would ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Audrey, would you like to start us out, please?
Sure. Audrey O'Neill, student representative.
Thank you.
Lisa Lenta.
Kate Leiden.
Sarah Trujillo.
Gregory Thompson.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Antonella Rochella.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Samantha Velasquez, Secretary.
Excellent. Thank you all. Have minutes for approval. I'd entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve the February 5th, 2024 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Sarah,
Second.
second by Antonella. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Samantha. Union Subcommittee Communications. Audrey, again.
Okay. My updates on ELHS. So I sort of focused on like a lot of the stuff that was building the community at ELHS, and the students are honestly doing a great job. So obviously I'm not going to follow it up because I'm a part of it, but the NHS, including all the other board members, ran their Valentine's Day Carnation fundraiser, and the entire club essentially participated, and that helped raise a decent amount of money that was used to purchase goods, and we're also going to use volunteer help. And we're running a bake sale fundraiser for See Something, Say Something week, and that's coming up, and that's a very important week because it's dedicated to commemorating Sandy Hook, and the NHS really wants to be a big part of it and help guidance and the administration plan it. So that's going to be coming up. And I think that's going to be really great to like focus on for a week in school. Going to the Student Diversity Alliance, you've sort of seen around, it's on your paper. They're running an event to celebrate Black History Month, and the leaders like Funmi Coates and Dan N have organized speakers and refreshments. So I honestly think that's really impressive as students to put on something like that. The course selections have come out, and so the ELHS students are currently trying to navigate the process. And just to give like a little shout out to the administration, they're really helping the underclassmen. They're running an assembly for parents and students soon. It's exciting to see the new offers for the next year, and the staff are working to make it as smooth as possible with all like the new stuff. And I've seen a lot of the students get excited for some of the new courses. And then just to go with sports to finish it off, the boys track team won Western Mass for the first time in school history. So I think that's really great. They've been working really hard. And then Funmi Coates again broke the school record in 300. So she's kind of doing really well and just showing that the student body is kind of representing the school really well. So that's all my updates.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Appreciate it. Amy.
I just have two quick things to share. The first thing is before vacation, I was able to meet with Mr. Pearson, take just a walking tour of Birchland. I don't have to tell anyone here how wonderful the school is operating right now. I got to go into some classrooms, see some pretty amazing hands-on kind of stuff going on. So it was a really, really productive visit. And then my other piece that I wanted to share was that eLeaf Gala this year raised over $82,000.
Wow.
Fabulous.
And it was a fun event.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Kate.
So LPVAC this week, that's coming up on Wednesday. That was postponed. So we're meeting with them, and we're meeting with ELAEI this week. And then I have a meeting set up with Mrs. Santinella to go see Mountain View. And Willy Wonka, we had a lot of great feedback about Willy Wonka at Mountain View, and the kids loved it, and the parents thought it was a great performance. So that was really exciting. And I don't want to forget something. I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
We started contract negotiations with the ELEA, so those are underway, and we'll continue, myself and Greg, to update the rest of the board as those negotiations continue.
Excellent. Thank you. It's known.
I don't have anything today.
Okay. Nor do I. So we will move right along. We have an opportunity for visitors to address the committee. Seeing none, check that one off. And we are fortunate to have the leadership team here today, so we will pass it on to Mr. Smith for the mid-cycle school presentations.
Okay, so we do have our entire leadership team here this evening. Unfortunately, Ms. Brown could not be with us this evening. We had sort of set the stage with a presentation of district data prior to the February break. And now each school is coming back to give a mid-cycle report that follows up on where they left all of you with their goals back in the fall. So why don't we start with our youngest school, Meadowbrook, and we have Ms. Logan Boucher.
I stood up to do the pledge. I apparently closed the presentation and my notes. When we were preparing for this, one of the things we were asked to do was talk to you guys about what was new and different since the last presentation. So just refreshing your memory on what our goals were, and then I'll give you an update on where we stand with each of them. With supporting the whole child, we have this broken out into kind of two parts. The first being focused around attendance, and that was mine with the commissioners focus on this across the state with chronic absenteeism being extremely high statewide. Meadowbrook was one of the schools designated as underperforming in attendance. So we had to take some steps in order to try to address this. We've made some significant improvements since 2 years ago. We were at 27% chronic absenteeism, and that means absent for 20% or more this school year. 10% or more this school year, sorry. And then brought it down to 18.4%. And our goal this year is to bring that down by at least 3% in line with the district goals to 15.4%. Gordon, if you could advance the slide, we are currently at 12% as of the Friday before break. So we've made some pretty significant improvement in that area. And our average daily attendance rate year to date as of Friday before break was 94.6%. So how have we gotten there? What's new and different this year? We're taking a lot of steps to communicate more with families about attendance. We started that with a letter in November to all families. It was a pretty lengthy letter, but I wanted to be very clear with folks about not only where we were at and why we were going to be taking the steps that we were going to be taking, but what steps we were going to take, and also what the district policies are. Even though every family gets a copy of the school code of conduct at the beginning of the year, pretty sure not everybody sits down and reads that cover to cover. So we took some excerpts from the attendance policy out and added that to that letter so folks could be extremely clear about what district policies are. That went out to every family in November. And then since then, at the end of every month, on the last day of the month, I've been running a school-wide attendance report and sending letters home to families on the first of the following month with information on their child's attendance. Anyone with 5 or more absences has been getting a letter. And in December, we sent 110 letters home. In January, 171, and in February, 225. It's important to note with those numbers, the January 1st, 171 includes the 110 that got one the month before. So it was really only an addition of 61. So it wasn't 171 brand new letters. And the reason I'm including everybody every month is just to keep everybody up to date. And as a reminder, even if their child's attendance rate hasn't changed since the last letter, I still want them to know what it is. In addition to those, we're also utilizing the district's care coordinator, making referrals in line with those reports that I'm running, the letters that are going home, and then sitting down and narrowing that down to students that need referrals to the care coordinator because they have an even higher level of attendance concern. Created a Google document that I've shared with her, and as I make the referral, I add into it any pertinent information. I include the attendance, but I also include any other information that might be helpful to her when she reaches out to the family. So I include information about the child's academic performance, nothing specific, just whether we feel like they're on track or maybe need a little bit of extra support. Any concerns about social, emotional health, any information that might be helpful for her. She then reaches out and speaks with the family about the student's attendance and what barriers are getting in the way and what we can do as a school to help. That Google Doc is shared back and forth so I can see the information. And then in addition to that, I do meet periodically with her to discuss that. So next round of those are coming out this week. I do think that's made a impact because we've had a lot of families reaching out with questions about those letters. One of the most common questions that I'm getting is, well, my kid was sick. What do you want me to do? Yes, I understand. We all get sick. We do want you to still follow the wellness policy and stay home if you're in one of those conditions such as fever-free for 24 hours. However, it's that much more important that families who do have kids that have had illnesses be mindful of their child's attendance, because we also still are seeing, and probably the biggest contributor for us, at least at our age level, are non-illness related issues like family vacations. In December, for example, we just got back from break. Child came back to school one day and was taken out of school early that first day to go on vacation for 10 days. One day I was covering the office and we were seeing a high level of dismissals before lunchtime. So I finally asked somebody, what's going on today? It was a hockey tournament. And so all the kids were getting dismissed from school and it was an absence to go to a hockey tournament. The same day had a family dismissing early to go for family photos. So it's a lot of non-illness related issues that we're still seeing. So those are probably some of the bigger contributors. And I just think we need to be very mindful of that because we do get sick. But it's the two of those things combined that's really impactful. And another thing that's impacting our attendance rates is we have quite a high number of students with chronic health issues this year, more so than I think I've ever seen in the past. And they're really, truly, and honestly valid reasons to be out of school. But we're seeing attendance rates with kids reaching 20, 30, 40. We have one that's as high as like 60 absences from school because of health issues, and they're medically documented. And valid reasons, but it's at a rate I haven't seen. So, and then other things we're doing, if you wouldn't mind advancing again, under supporting the whole child.
Wait, can I just ask some questions? Attendance. This was the first time you've done the letters, and you think that it's made a difference?
I do. Yeah, we've had a lot of parents calling us or emailing us after receiving those letters to ask questions, meaningful, important questions, but it opens up a dialogue.
Is this something you think you'll continue next year? Is there anything you would change about it? Or things that you think that be better or?
Yeah, there's a few things. One of the things I've started to do, there's a couple of families that I've noticed have made significant improvement since I've had conversations with them, and I've written some handwritten notes on the bottom, keep up the good work. I've noticed no new absences in the last 2 months kind of thing. So I think I would also try to reach out more on the positive side for things like that as well and have an avenue for that. And then probably just, it's very time consuming.
It sounds like it's
Very time consuming. And because it's the first year we're doing it, I wanted my eyes on it. So I've been the one doing it.
Yeah.
I wanted to know which kids were the ones having the significant attendance issues. One of the things I'd like to do is try to get the teachers a little bit more involved in the process as well, so that it's not just coming from the office, but that the teachers are expressing concern to the families directly when their kids are absent because they're seeing the impact. I just didn't feel like that was something it would be one more thing to ask of them in a year when we're still delving into all that brand new curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to keep that on my plate for this year, but next year my hope is to kind of throw that ball back in their court a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Once students have however many absences at Meadowbrook, it's always going to be that number? Or is there any way that they can make stuff up or anything like that?
It's not like the high school where.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Recovery. So yeah, they all count. Excused and unexcused absences count towards chronic absenteeism. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we're stuck a little bit between a rock and a hard place when you have kids that really truly do have a chronic health condition that need to be out of school for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It still counts towards our rates.
Okay.
So
I wasn't sure.
doing that delicate dance with some of the families that we're in touch with.
And the interesting thing is that in chronic absenteeism from DESE's standpoint, they don't differentiate between the documented health situation
Right.
and others. It's all in one number. However, if you continue down that chart, far at the end, they do have a number of excused absences, but it never makes any of the the fanfare of their presentations.
Is there any policy to unenroll if they're going away for longer than like 10 days or anything like that? Does that
So
help?
we don't have a policy per se, but we have started a practice where, especially with some of our families who have gone overseas and they're going for about a month or more, that
That they
in
have
those
that.
cases, rather than, because a lot of times the request is, would you be able to supply work?
Yeah.
And say, well, if the date is somewhat undetermined as to when you're going to return, it might be wise to unenroll, and then when you return, re-enroll, and we can reactivate you pretty quickly.
Okay.
So they're
In those cases.
To supply meaningful work for
Yes.
5-year-olds.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of the instructions coming from.
Mhm. Day to day. Yep. Okay. Thank
Yeah, sure. Good question.
Renee, did you have 225 students that missed a quarter of the days of February? Is that a fair statement?
Are you referring to the 220?
225, yeah.
No, that's cumulative from the start of the school.
That's 110 plus the ones into the 171, and then
So none of the 110 aren't reoccurring every month? Is that what you're saying?
They are. So if you look at January 1st.
Not the letters, but the attendance. They're not missing 5 days in December.
No, it's cumulative. I look at everybody from August 30th until today when I
Okay.
report that has 5 or more.
I got you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Some of the other things we're doing under supporting the whole child, as I've shared with you, we've seen a pretty significant increase with students with social emotional challenges within the school. We've created the social emotional learning program, hired a teacher, reallocated some paraprofessionals within the building. We've created program description and guidelines for that program. And since last speaking with you, I've selected a curriculum for the teacher to use and provided some training. She's utilizing the PATH program, which is promoting alternative thinking strategies and Trestle. It includes social emotional lessons, classroom management, positive classroom management strategies, and then works on generalization of skills back into the regular education setting. Our original hope was to provide training for the staff within that program on trauma and its effects on learning. As we were getting ready to set that training up, we realized how valuable that would be for our entire school. And so instead of just training the staff in that program, we held the training with Mr. Fredette's support for the staff at the entire school. We used Michelle Barnard from Interlocking Connections. She not only consults with our school as a BCBA, but she's also a licensed professional counselor with a background in trauma. So it worked out very well. She was not only familiar with our students and the challenges that we're facing as a school, but has that background to be able to talk with staff about it. So she provided a half-day PD and then 2 one-hour follow-up sessions that were very well received. And many of our paraprofessionals took the opportunity to attend that PD as well. In addition to that, we have had a couple of district workshops focused on trauma. A lot of Meadowbrook staff, while it wasn't mandatory, a lot of our staff chose to attend those workshops, myself included. One of the ones that I went to was, I had a little aha moment that I'll just share with you from that workshop. I'm very heavily rooted in neuroscience. And for those of you who don't know my background, it is in health and health sciences. And I could nerd out on that topic for a very long time, but I'll spare you all of that. The idea behind that moment of takeaway for me was we learn when we're little kids, we have 5 senses, right? Sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. There's actually 8 senses. And there's 2 in particular that we don't learn about that are very impactful on young children. And that is proprioceptive input, which are your gross motor movements, your walking, running, jumping. And then your vestibular input, which are more balance activities that have to do with spinning and twirling and different things like that. And if you think back to when you were a child and the activities that you used to do outside, we played on merry-go-rounds, we swung on swing sets, we did jump rope. We did a lot of activities that involved, we rode our bikes, gliding is one of those. Kids don't do that as often as they used to do. And then on top of that, we're seeing the kids coming into our school now that were in their developmental years where they really need that input during the pandemic where they didn't get outside and play a lot. And so that's having an even greater impact on young children in schools because touch, vestibular, and proprioceptive senses are all linked to emotional stability. So that for me was like a big moment of wow, that really makes sense as to what we're seeing every day in the school. So one of the things you'll see teachers do commonly in elementary classrooms when the kids are getting fidgety and they're on the rug and they're done, is a movement break. A lot of those movement breaks do serve a purpose in getting the kids up and getting them moving. But the movement breaks that the women who ran this training focus on incorporate proprioceptive and vestibular input very intentionally. So they are intended to help the kids emotionally regulate to be able to come back to the learning. And they have a very different impact on the kids. Some of the other movement breaks that you might see will get the kids kind of even more riled up, and then they have an even harder time returning to the learning. So it's making our kids to do these purposeful movement breaks and give them the proprioceptive and vestibular input, making them more resilient to trauma and stress. So I was really thrilled with that workshop. The staff that walked away, they all approached me within minutes of walking out the door. I couldn't even make it down the hallway to talk about what a great workshop it was. So I'm exploring with Heather possibilities for bringing that in as a full school workshop at the start of the school year for everybody. Because I think a lot of those activities they're so quick hitting and they're things you can do. The staff that did attend, we were walking around within days of that workshop, seeing people that were there already putting some of those activities into place. There was one that was, I think you were in the room when we did the rain activity. We walked in and she was doing that already with her class. There's a lot more to the workshop, but I'll spare you all the neuroscience.
Actually, it was really well attended, and we had members from all 5 schools in that workshop, and that was an all-day workshop. A few that went all day.
And I think part of the reason it ended up being an all-day workshop is because we had an 1.5-hour session with her in the fall workshop, and it got such good feedback that Heather brought her back for a full day, which we got way more out of it with the full day workshop. And then just to wrap up with this particular goal, River Valley Counseling, not new. What is new is that we've expanded from 2 days to 3 days. We now have about 20 kids being seen, a few more in the referral process, and many more that we could be referring. So we're looking at the possibility of now adding a 4th day with River Valley at our school with a counselor who specializes in working with preschool age children. So we're working on that right now.
Thanks. I'm up next. So for teaching and learning, ongoing classroom visits, we continue to ensure equitable access to high quality grade level curriculum and effective practices so that all students benefit both academically and emotionally. And if we go to the next slide, you can notice the comparison data from iReady, and you can see that in reading, there was no change in the percentage of students at or above grade level from winter 2023 to this winter 2024. And that percentage is 52%. In addition, our numbers for students 1 and 2 years below grade level were also nearly exactly the same.
That's 2 different cohorts.
Yes, yeah. And if we go to the next slide, when we look at the school year, the comparison from fall to winter shows a 16% increase for students at or above grade level in reading, as well as a 12% and a 6% decrease of students 1 and 2 years below grade level, respectively. When we take a deeper dive, so that would be the next slide, we can see that this trend also holds true for each of the domains in reading. From this fall, we have increased the number of students at or above grade level in all domains and have decreased the numbers in the below grade level categories for all domains. Phonological awareness increased from 66 to 73% of students at or above grade level. Phonics had a 20% rise in students at or above grade level, from 37% to 57%. High frequency words went up 8%. Vocabulary increased from 32% to 48%, and Meadowbrook students have made a 22% gain in overall literacy comprehension so far this year, and that measures both literature and nonfiction. On the next slide, you'll see that despite having adopted multiple new curricula, our scores have remained consistent from last year to this year. And this also holds true in math, where we have our new curricular program, Illustrative Math. When we look at the fall and winter comparison for this school year in math, you will see that there is a 20% increase in students at or above grade level, and there is a 19% decrease in students scoring below grade level. On the next slide, you can see it by domain. And you will notice that the trend is also similar for the one in reading. We have increased our numbers for at or above grade level on all domains, as well as decreased our numbers for students below grade level. So iReady measures numbers and operations, and that went from 26% in the green to 44%. Algebra moved from 23% to 50%. Measurement and data show an increase from 25% to 39%. And geometry rose from 28% to 42% of students on or above grade level. I just want to take a minute because we know that this is no easy task given all that we've asked our teachers recently. And I just wanted to recognize them and celebrate them and let them know we truly are grateful for all our teachers and support staff at Meadowbrook. It has been a heavy lift and they've done a great job. So the question becomes, how did we get here? And we have been diligently working to implement all of our new curriculum programs. Many teachers have been able to bring their creativity to the wit and wisdom this year by engaging their classes in projects such as pioneer journaling in second grade and farm murals in kindergarten. I was able to see the final product, but not the work in action, which I'm kind of sad about because the teacher was so excited and I had come in and she said, come look. And there were 4 murals, one for each of the seasons on the farm, because the story was about seasons throughout the farm. And the kids worked in groups. They had to work collaboratively and they had to include the barn and the tree. And everything else, she had materials for them in a bin, a bucket, and everything else they had to decide if they were going to use it, if they weren't going to use it, where to put it. And she said there was not one disagreement or argument, and everyone was respectful and they worked so well to get together. And I was so proud about that because sometimes it's hard to work together, especially when you're 5 and you want the red one right there. So that was really neat. So let's see what else. We also look forward to our living museum visit in kindergarten this spring. I think we told you about it last year. And this is when we can learn more about the life long ago in this country. And they have hands-on artifacts that you can try out and test and use, and it's super fun. We've also been able to get to where we are through professional development and common planning time. We've been able to learn about innovative centered mathematical instructional practices with math labs. We've completed 1 round of these and are currently in the midst of the 2nd round, and that began before February vacation. These are a variation of lesson studies where each grade level analyzes an upcoming lesson that they will teach, and they discuss it with guidance from a facilitator from Mike Flynn and Associates, as well as our math coach. Teachers observe the facilitator delivering the lesson, and they have a chance to interact with the students while they are working. Then they gather after the lesson to debrief and discuss further. In addition, the district offered PD related to the math labs that facilitated the promotion of Peter Liljedahl's thinking classroom. And I think that was very well attended and appreciated. I know several teachers have begun to implement their learnings. And a 2nd grade teacher provided us with an email unsolicited that had very high praise. She says, just wanted you to know the strategies and ideas learned from Mike Flynn's implementing practices that promote thinking classrooms in mathematics K-2 PD not only made a big impression on my colleagues who also attended and me, but work well with all of my students. And she showed us a picture of her kids working together. Another 2nd grade teacher commented in her teach point in response to a question I had about her math lesson that I observed. So she answered the question in the teach point, and she said, we use the white books, and that's a dry erase surface like a bigger one that kids can stand up and use a few days before the introduction to measurement. She said the students have really done an awesome job on the thinking classroom activities we have already done thus far. She says a great addition to math block. So that's exciting to see. In addition, for literacy, we offered 3 90-minute sessions at the most recent district full day PD, and that focused on ways to incorporate differentiated small group literacy experiences. Teachers from Meadowbrook and Maple Shade attended, and the overall feedback was very positive. Here at Meadowbrook, we have seen teachers working with the literacy coach to find ways to structure their literacy block to include small group instruction. Some teachers are using their time to teach phonics in small groups, while others have begun to use decodable readers in their small groups. And these help students solidify their phonics skills through practice with connected text, which is so important. I know our literacy coach was also approached by a few teachers at the end of the PD sessions to ask for her support with restructuring their literacy block to try to start implementing some more small group work in their rooms. During the second grade common planning time, our literacy coach has been able to implement data dives around foundational skills to help groups of teachers strategize and plan for their next steps. So that's been very helpful as well. And let me just put on my glasses so I can see. Yes, so the bottom half of this slide provides an update on our reading and math interventions. And you can see the numbers there, but it is worthy to note that in total, 36 students have exited intervention so far this year. And this indicates that they have made sufficient and effective progress to no longer require these services. So we're proud of them for that. Given all this information, we feel Meadowbrook continues to move forward in the right direction with solid progress in literacy and math.
And then the last one will be pretty short, in regards to supportive culture, short but exciting. We shared with you in the fall that one of our biggest goals in this area was installing a new playground, and are very excited to have. We originally thought we were going to be pursuing a grant for this, but we're very excited and appreciative that you all approved moving forward with ESSER funding for this, and got the final go-ahead by DESE as well. So the ball's moving in the right direction. I'm definitely in a bit over my head on this one here. So thankfully Pam's by my side. This is a pretty hefty project to be working on. And all the financial pieces of it are new to me in terms of obviously having to go out to bid on things. So where we're at with it is Pam and I have been working with Patricia Burke, thank you, from the Operational Services Division, and she's been incredibly helpful. Just to kind of go over the process and where we have to go from here. One of the first things we realized we needed to do was bring out an engineer. Probably civil engineer would be my guess as who's going to bid on this, but to take a look at the space and make sure that it's adequate for the playground that we're hoping to put in. My hope is to put in an approximately 45 by 90 foot playground with a poured in place rubberized surface to make it completely accessible. I would also like to include another 45 by 90 foot open grassy area where the kids can play, and then fence that whole thing in. The reason it needs to be fenced is because any preschool playground needs to have a foot-high, non-climbable fence. So I've had to get quotes on what the playground would cost, and I've worked with 3 different companies on that. Quotes from fencing companies. We've got the engineers coming out. PM used the state contract to put out a bid for that. They're coming out to do walkthroughs on March 5th and March 7th to look at the space. We're also working with Trish on the idea of whether or not we can use the state contract for the purchase and installation of the playground itself. The caveat, there's a lot of benefits to using the state contract. You're getting obviously the state negotiated prices and everything, and it's all through Combi, so it's all in one area. But the caveat is there's a cap of $50,000 for the labor costs. And we're not quite sure with the fact that there needs to be excavation, rock brought in, the pouring of rubberized concrete, and the installation, whether we'll be able to stay within that $50,000 labor cost cap. So what I did is go back out to the companies that had already given me a quote and ask them to break that down further and include the labor costs so that we can get a better idea of whether we have to use, whether we can use a state contract or whether we have to go out to bid independently, which is a bit more work, time consuming. So we're kind of in the middle of that process right now. And then if we do have to move forward and we're above the $50,000 in labor costs, we have kind of two avenues that we could take. One would be that we purchase the equipment through the state contract and then go out to bid independently for the installation. And the other would be that we keep the entire bid independent. And after talking it through, Pam, myself, and Trish, we feel it would be best to keep it all together. Because if you purchase the equipment through one company and then have a different company come out and install it, it's affecting warranties, it's affecting your ability to kind of follow up and follow through with that company. I've seen it even just with our roof when we have the company that installed it saying, oh, no, that's a manufacturer's thing. And the manufacturer's saying, oh, no, that's an installation thing. So Trish felt as well that it would probably be best to keep those two things together.
Even the fence, could we pull the fence out?
The fence could be separate.
That's separate.
Yeah.
It could, and
That
there's.
wouldn't even need a state bid. We would bid it, potentially.
Yeah,
Potentially.
Are you gonna get rid of the other fence, the other preschool fence that you talked about?
would love to,
And quote.
but I'll have to work with DPW on that. And I know they're a little bit,
It's non-climbable.
you would definitely wouldn't use it.
You're not gonna need it anymore, that's my question, right? Because you'll have the other one. Yeah, great. Fuck, I can push it right down if you want.
Hey,
At the high school.
do it. I'd love to get rid of that. As we've been working through that whole process, I've also been attending workshops through the state on inclusive playground design. I've attended 3 of them now on ADA compliant playgrounds, and Lauren and I have been visiting local playgrounds to see some different ideas. We don't have to have a final drawing in the bid process, but we have to have minimum specs of what we'd like included. So we wanted to get our eyes on some of this equipment. So Lauren went to the beautiful playground down in West Hartford near where she lives, got some pictures of some stuff there. And I visited Long Meadow, Holyoke, which just opened in like October or November. And then I visited Belchertown as well to see what their different playgrounds look like. Some of them are much nicer than others, and I think we will definitely have the nicest one in our area.
Would that be open to the public after hours? I know fence, so great. So is that the ideal location for it? Because of after hours? I know for during hours it probably is, but
In terms of, I mean, on our school property, you mean?
yes.
It definitely is the best for us within school hours, which I hate to be fresh, but that's my priority. It's right near the preschool classrooms. And so you don't want to take a whole bunch of 3-year-olds,
Walk them.
walk them all the way across the other side of the property. In terms of accessibility, it's still fairly close. I would want to try to make sure we had at least a couple handicap accessible parking spots near that area. But I can't think of another place that would really be convenient to put it because of where some underground lines are on the other side and the baseball fields and all of that.
Fair, yeah.
And although DPW, and Renee, you did a great job explaining all that, thank you. DPW is not able to help us with the actual excavation because they're short-staffed as well and they don't want to, overcommit. But they are going to meet us on the 5th and the 7th with any of those potential civil engineers to talk about the ground. I mean, it's pretty flat, but there's some wetlands behind there. And so we want to make sure we do it right. And that's the first step. So that's where we're at right now.
Ideally, the best place to put it would be where we have our 2nd grade playground. But
Yeah.
that one's new enough where I wouldn't want to disturb that.
And that one needs some work though as well.
It does, yeah, believe it or not.
See if we can address that too, I think.
That would be great.
Yeah.
The wear and tear on that.
Super important to have.
A couple of the pieces are already broken, bolts have come out, and then all the climbing structures where there's rope, it's right down to the metal already.
Okay.
I'm trying to get someone out to look at it and give me an estimate.
What year was that? Was that 2016?
2016.
Wow.
But when you've got a school of 600 kids
Yeah,
all
yeah.
playing on it with no other playground, it wears down a whole heck of a lot faster. So,
I just had one question about from to teaching and learning, the learning walks you guys are doing. Is there a focus for them? Have you seen a difference or?
so ours are pretty informal. Lauren and I have been doing them both on our own. We've had Gordon come out for a couple, Heather come out for a couple. We're not doing them specific to a focus so much as right now we've been focused on literacy. With where we are at with implementing the new curriculum, a lot of it was really focused on that's implemented.
That's still a focus.
So we're not digging too deep
Yeah,
into
and that's-
specifics, but really there was some, as I'm sure everyone knows, some pushback about some of the new curricular resources, and there was a lot of kind of rumor floating around about, well, so-and-so down the hall's not doing it, and so-and-so down the hall's not doing it. And so we wanted to get in and just make sure at this point that it is being done.
Everyone's doing it.
Fidelity, and that folks are generally within the same kind of area within the curriculum.
Did you guys notice that everyone was doing it, or
Yes.
was there a change after they noticed you guys were coming in and?
All of the above and some other things as well. So we'll notice pockets like within a CPT group where they're all within a lesson or two. It's funny, we'll walk into 4 different rooms on the
Yeah.
same day and see almost the same thing going on in each of the rooms. There were a couple of rooms that we visited where you could tell they're doing it because their stuff is up on the walls and things like that. Like you could see the Pioneer journals and things. But if we came in during the literacy block and it wasn't happening, we made a point to come back the next day or two.
Yeah.
Just to be sure. I definitely can say with confidence they're happening in every single classroom within the building. There are some that are feeling more comfortable and confident with it and taking it and making it their own. And there are some that maybe pushed back a little more last year that didn't do as much of it, that are still in that early learning phase of just grappling with learning the curriculum. And that's exactly what we expected to see. So we are making notes to ourselves at this point and not necessarily, like I've done learning walks before where we've shared about kind of global feedback with the teachers. We're not at that point just yet. But for folks that we maybe need to, we'll have individual conversations with them about what we're seeing.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great. So much.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maple Shade.
Hello.
Okay, let's see, supporting the whole child. Can you go back? Go back.
The off one?
Yeah, starts with attendance.
There we go.
All right, so just to remind everyone at Maple Shade, we're really fortunate that we have teachers who make our classes a place where our students want to come to, our kids want to come to our classes, and we have parents who work hard to get the kids there. So we're operating at a pretty high attendance rate right now, which is great. That number would be higher, but everyone got slammed pretty hard coming back from December break. There was a lot of illnesses, a lot of just different strains of nasty bugs that were going around. So that dropped us down a little bit. But it also does show that, though we saw a surge in COVID cases, it brought us back to a couple of years ago when that word and that term and that uncertainty, caused a lot of fear. But it just showed how far that we've come in terms of community, in terms of the resilience of pushing through and being able to meet the kids, where they are when they come to us. So what we have been doing in terms of staying on top of attendance, much like Meadowbrook, at the beginning of every month, I run a report through Panorama. I look to see our students as identified by Panorama who are critical and at risk. And I have a running spreadsheet that allows me to keep track of, who is missing from school at the higher rates. And then I'm able to just cross-reference with what I know from the families. And if need be, I reach out and I set up communication. We currently have 2 families that are working with our care coordinator. So I'm just every month I am able to stay on top of our attendance to make sure that our kids are coming to school. And as you can see there at the bottom, I'm able to link our ST Math Journey percentage, which I'll get to in a couple slides. So if a student is missing a significant amount of days, if that student has been identified by Panorama as being critical or at risk in attendance, and their ST math percentage rate is lower than the goal, I'm able to link that in the letter to just show what learning loss looks like. This is an example of learning loss. So it's a easy point of data to share with parents. Yeah, so that's attendance. And then with supporting the whole child, we are looking at our surveys very clearly, very closely, and our student support team are creating lessons to implement in our second step block. So our students are receiving social emotional lessons that meet the needs as they themselves are identifying. Also lessons designated to the monthly themes that we have. We're going to go to the next slide. So in looking at our SEL surveys, what is important to note is that if you were to compare how our students self-reported last year at this time compared to how our students are self-reporting this year at this time, we are seeing an increase in positive self-reports from our students. So everything that is in green on these slides is either the exact same number that it was last year at this time, or it has increased. So in each of these categories, in all but two, our students are self-reporting at more positive rates than they were last year at this time. So as you can see in school climate, our students, 82% say that people treat each other with respect. And we saw a big jump in that 81% in which our students feel safe at school, and they know that they won't be hurt physically or made fun of. And as you can see, that correlates to the questions on bullying, which is very affirming, because last year, Carolyn McBride, our school psychologist, she won a grant for anti-bullying, and we procured an addition to the second step program all around anti-bullying that we were able to incorporate in our second step lessons throughout the month of October to just help support the anti-bullying messaging in October. So it's great to see that students are seeing that we're putting forth an effort on treating people with respect, treating others with respect, and putting forth an anti-bullying environment in which our students can feel safe while they're learning. And this is just awesome. This is just great to see that there is just an increase in positive feelings. As the more comfortable our students are feeling, the more excited they are feeling, the more at ease they are feeling, the more likely they are to engage at higher levels. So if you go to the next slide, here's our engagement. So this is good to see that, again, compared to last year at this time, things trending in positive directions. From excited about going to school, as much as, I try to make school to be an exciting place, as much as our teachers try to make school to be an exciting place, a lot of the time, school is not always the place that students seek out and that they want it to be. So for them to self-report that, they're excited to come to school, that's positive to me. The fact that they're interested in what they are learning, and that, we are self-reporting at a higher rate of trying new things, and trying new things when they're getting stuck, which is something that I have seen in practice, especially in math classes, when students are collaborating with one another, reporting in front of the entire class on the different ways in which they've gone about solving equations and the different strategies that they have used each other, about just the different strategy that they could put forth on how to solve certain problems and show their thinking. So it's really cool that they have these different strategies that they can then apply. And when they get stuck, they know what to do, how to move on to the next strategy. then challenging feelings. There's only a couple of areas in which our students, are self-reporting more positively. And that's something that we continue to work on a daily basis. So for teaching and learning, we are still in the midst of training teachers in Gillingham, which is a massive undertaking for our teachers that have signed up for it, because it's basically taking getting another college degree. But it's a effort that is going to definitely yield positive results by next year at this time. So we have had a handful of teachers who have embarked upon this. As you can see, they have completed 64 hours of coursework, and now they're going to begin an 8-month-long practicum. Now, this is going to, once they have completed this, it will mean that in each one of our grades, we have inclusion teachers who have been trained in either Orton Gillingham or Wilson Reading Services. And on top of that, we will have a substantially separate classroom teacher who will have been trained in this. So students who need the most help will be serviced by teachers who are now equipped to be able to give them the help that they need. And we will have teachers in the inclusion homeroom, who are the homeroom teachers who have been trained as well. So students who are either inclusion students or general ed students who are in that classroom also will be exposed to teachers who have expanded significantly the tools in the toolbox to be serviced in this reading training. And it also just allows, from a scheduling standpoint, it allows us to be able to be more flexible in being able to schedule those next level services of students and additional tier 3 services in reading. We now have more staff that have been trained in that. But it is the hope that now that teachers have been trained in this, I believe that being exposed to the strategies in, the inclusion classrooms, it will reduce the risk, or not the risk, but the need for future referrals. And this is these are our projected proficiency reading slides. So if this is the MCAS test, as far as I understand it, 3% of our students in the building right now, if we're to follow this chart, are expected to exceed expectations. 30% are expected to meet expectations. 58% are expected to partially meet expectations, and 9% are expected to not meet expectations in reading this year.
Explain that a little bit more, Connor.
This is as I know it. So if you look at that 3%, that dark green,
yep.
That is expected to be, if I understand this line appropriately, that 3% is supposed to correlate with the MCAS proficiency levels. So that 3% is expected to match with how our students will fall with exceeding expectations. The 30% is expected to be meeting expectations. That 58% is expected to be partially meeting, and that 9% is not meeting.
Based off their iReady?
This comes from iReady, based on what iReady is seeing right now.
So after their second diagnostic, this is what iReady is predicting.
Okay.
And so this is something that we can then start to look at, start to break down. Classroom teachers can break down to see where their students are and see, okay, what kind of growth have we seen for individual students? How do I accelerate that growth?
Yeah.
And it gives them a deeper look than we've been.
So after, you'll go back and compare and see if this actually came to fruition.
Yeah. This is my first time utilizing this particular chart. So we'll have more information, once MCAS comes out next year. I'll take a closer look at this to see how much it correlates as we're expecting.
But as of right now, it would align with Last year in MCAS.
All right.
So what does that tell us? Anything?
No, it just means that they're in alignment to kind of have the same percentage of students either exceed or meet expectations as they did last year. So in terms of what the targets were for last year, I think that's where we would have to kind of look, like, what did that mean in terms of
You're
the
not hitting
state
targets.
expectations?
And this is what it looks like for math. So 5% exceeding, 49 partially, and 12 not meeting. So here is the most recent information from iReady for our reading scores. So as Meadowbrook had stated, we are currently in year 2 of implementing Wit and Wisdom, which is a hefty and dense curriculum that I'm finding takes time to really absorb and make your own. So our teachers are still in the midst of implementing this while trying to make it their own as much as possible, because one challenge that we are finding is we're to follow each one of the lessons. Each lesson is taking multiple days, and it is becoming repetitive for our students. So we want to keep that engagement level up. So, what we're asking our teachers is to really, study, Wit and Wisdom and how it's going with the students in order to make any, future changes to reduce the possibility of that redundancy to keep the student engagement up while maintaining the rigors and the structures of the program itself. And this is where we were last year at this time. So similar to Meadowbrook, we're very close last year to this year. And here we are for math. So this year, we are fully in illustrative math. Similarly to what Meadowbrook had reported on, all of our teachers in the learning labs. And at this time, all of our teachers have vertical whiteboards in their classrooms. Our teachers have incorporated the vertical whiteboard strategies that they observed, that they engaged in the learning labs. So shout out to my PTO for being able to get those vertical whiteboards for everyone. And like I said, our teachers are implementing that strategy in their classrooms to allow their students to really engage in these practices, to really grapple with the content, and to present to each other their thinking and their learning and how they go about engaging in these math problems. And this is where we were last year, and it's very similar to how we're looking this year. So I have some more points that I didn't include. Today I started diving into some of the reports, and even though it's not on the slides, there's some things I definitely want to shout out. So our students currently, in terms of ST Math, our supplemental, math program that we use for conceptual learning for our students, we are currently outperforming our student progress goal. At this time next week, we'll continue to be outperforming. So our students are fully engaged in that. It's something that, they take ownership of. They know exactly what they're, where they are in terms of their own progress and what they need to do. And at a recent ST Math training that I had gone to, I was really interested in what they were teaching us, which was they were trying to find that correlation between ST Math and iReady, and to see if there was any sort of crossroads where they intersected. And they found that students who reach 100% progress on ST Math are expected to gain 13 points on iReady. So, every day when I walk into the cafeteria, students run up to me and they let me know where they are and how far away from 100% they are in terms of ST Math. So they're they're engaged, they're grappling with it. And you know, the hope is that the more they are grappling with these concepts, they're making the connections in their head, and they're understanding the math at a deeper level, which will then be revealed on iReady. In terms of comparison with our iReady currently from this year and last year, in iReady reading, our special education students are currently outperforming their progress to annual typical growth than special education students from last year. At this time, similarly, we have a higher percentage of special education students who are 3 or more grade levels below, with higher annual typical growth progress than students in the same demographic from last year. Our students currently overall are outperforming the students from last year at this time in annual typical growth. Comparative to last year's special ed students in math, a higher percentage of our special ed students met their annual typical growth this year. Comparative to last year's special education students in math, a higher percentage of special ed students 3 or more grade levels below met their growth level goals. And as I stated, all of our teachers have engaged in learning labs. There are vertical whiteboards in every room. We currently have 28 students receiving reading intervention services, and we have 32 students receiving additional math assistance after school. And then in terms of just inclusive and supportive culture, we can go to the next slide. You know, this is something that, you know, we really want to be able to give our students the space to recognize their cultures, their backgrounds, their identities, and so that they feel safe, they feel supported, they feel seen. So we've done that in a couple ways. So we had our second annual Food Fest this past January. So we had approximately 250 people attend, which was higher than last year. We had 35 dishes prepared from 25 different countries. So it was just a great way to be able to celebrate the different cultures that make up our little community. We are currently 3 interviews deep in our cultural corner, which allows our students to be able to present to the school on their heritage, their backgrounds. Beginning in March, we're going to start running those. This next one here, empathy interviews. I took this after meeting with our my CLE coach. We were looking at the demographics across the years in math, MCAS, and which demographics really stood out to us. And our Hispanic population had dropped significantly since 2017. And so the question is why? So, you know, it was recommended that I embark upon empathy interviews. So I've, you know, spoken to 10 students about their perspective in math to see if there was anything that, you know, I could, see that maybe I didn't see before, or, reveal that that we didn't know. There was no real aha moment, but really, I think the bigger takeaway was that students like being celebrated, students like their progress being monitored. They like to know where they are. They like to know how they're learning. They like recognition when they're doing well. So at the very least, the students felt good being able to share their perspectives in math with me about that. So hopefully that kind of boosted their confidence a little bit too. But I'm very, very excited for our BIPOC affinity group. And I just thank you, Birchland, thank you, Natalie and Steve, for this, because I went flying over to them, one day, and I said, I want an affinity group, and I want Birchland to be able to help mentor our kids. So we currently have 10 students who are going to go over to Birchland every other week for lunch to meet with Natalie, myself, and a number of their students to be mentored, just to create just a safe, affirming place, and just allow for an opportunity to have their voice be heard. So if there's any feedback that I need to hear as the Maple Shade principal to continue to make Maple Shade an inclusive place. This is another mechanism for that. So this will start on Wednesday. I'm super pumped. And I think that this last bullet here, I think this is just great. I think that speaks to Maple Shade and everything that, we do here. We have 88% of our students staying after for one club or another. So between chorus, between art club, between drama club, or the after school math clubs, we have 88% of our students staying after to continue the Maple Shade Day. So that to me just speaks volumes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, switch gears. Now, tell us about Mountain View.
No, I didn't go anywhere on vacation. I was dying. It feels like.
How you messing with a thermostat back there?
To get it to the right temperature?
No, we'll open some windows. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Said I'd bring a little bit of a pity to the. So, hello, everyone. I'm going to start the same way I started in the fall with our attendance data. So we exceeded our chronic absenteeism target last year in all groups. And we are still above our average daily attendance is 95.6, which is above the state target. It is a little bit lower than it was in the fall. That was 96.8 when I was here last. The reason that it may have dropped is, as Renee mentioned, vacations are or non-illness days off are a big issue at Mountain View. I did ask Peter to help me, Peter Hadley helped me go into Power School to see, how many kids have been absent, why they've been absent. And I was able to figure out that over 40% of the students that are in the critical or at-risk range for attendance are for vacations. So mainly that means kids have missed over 8 or 9 days right now, I believe. And I have had several students taking 2-week trips, like Renee mentioned, probably siblings of kids in my school. So that's definitely my biggest issue. I do also have some students who have chronic health issues. So I do think it's unfair, if I'm being honest, that students with chronic health issues are counted in being chronically absent. I think if we wanted to really identify what the issues were, then we would have the state let us delineate between why kids are chronically absent. But right now, we're okay at Mountain View with that. Next slide, thank you. On this slide, I focused in the fall talking to you about our panorama surveys and the SABRS, which we also administer at Mountain View. We do both because panorama allows us to identify overall patterns in the school and make general decisions about what we can do, but it doesn't allow us to tie potentially concerning open-ended responses to individual students. So in panorama, the kids can write comments after they answer questions. We can't tell who did it. SABRS, which stands for Social, Academic, and Emotional Behavior Risk Screener, is what we administer to get more detailed data. And we're in our second year of the pilot. The teachers also complete the same questions about all of their students. So we're able to see a comparison if the teachers are rating the students the same as they're rating themselves. We give both 3 times a year. And you will go to the next slide. This is the panorama data. So on the right-hand column, you can see the categories where we dropped a little bit from the fall. So I dug a little deeper, and there were 3 questions that were asked that had a lower percentage than the fall in those areas. One was, I have been the target of bullying this year. 83% responded favorably, but that was down 2 from the fall. I have witnessed bullying this year. That was at
83% did not.
83% were not the target. Yes, I know it's very confusing.
Gets confusing.
The second one, I have witnessed bullying this year, 62% have not, which is a 9-point drop from the fall. And the third one was, my school has made an effort to stop bullying from happening. 85% said we have, but that was a 3-point drop. So when I actually, first of all, when you take the fall survey, this is about week 1, week 2 of school. The kids don't know a lot of their classmates yet. I refer to it as the honeymoon. I have fewer behavior issues, fewer arguments at the beginning of the year. Once you hit the winter, we're all comfortable. As one of my teachers would call it, it's day 5 of the family vacation. So when I dug into the comment sections, again, I can't connect them. But I saw a pattern of not truly understanding what bullying means versus just an isolated, unkind encounter. So some of the words they were using were rude, swearing, disagreement, bad mood. That's not bullying. So what I feel and the rest of my MTSS team feels is that we need to maybe look, as Connor mentioned, he did at Maple Shade, at implementing something that's more focused on what bullying actually is and how to handle it. So our MTSS team is going to look into maybe going back to using the MARC curriculum, which we used before we had Second Step. And that really focuses on bullying. And it also focuses a lot on social media and online behavior, which in my opinion is a huge contributor to what's going on at Mountain View in terms of behavior or even issues that the kids are dealing with. Second Step has its strengths, but those topics are not addressed as much as problem solving and empathy, which is very important. But what we're seeing, the kids have a lack of communication skills with each other, and they are using their we have kids grades 3, 4, and 5, cell phones, smartphones, and they're on social media apps, which technically they shouldn't be, because I believe the age is 13 for when they're supposed to download them. But most of the behaviors I'm dealing with, if I have any problems in school, started at home the night before in a very large group text or on a social media app. And even though technically I shouldn't have to handle what's happening, it gets brought into school. So then I do have to handle it. So we're going to try to supplement to make these responses improve. The next slide are the SABRS results from the mid-year. And the students rate the frequency of their behaviors in the previous month using a rating scale of never, sometimes, often, and almost always. They answer 20 questions in the domains of social, academic, and emotional behavior. So some of the examples are, I get along with my peers, it's hard to pay attention in class, I feel nervous, and the scores classify the students as either high risk, some risk, or low risk. I'm happy to say that school-wide, 0% of the students evaluated themselves as high risk. Teachers did evaluate 1% overall of the students at Mountain View as high risk. But these numbers show that 7% of the kids said they had some risk, 93% were low risk, and 9% of the teachers saw some risk, and 90% of the teachers saw low risk. And the numbers underneath were the fall numbers, so they have improved since the fall a little bit with the students in particular. The teachers dropped a little bit. Okay, next slide. So My goal or our goal at Mountain View this year is to improve our iReady growth. And on the fall administration of iReady, 45% of our students were performing on grade level in reading and 31% in math. And my goal in the SMART goals was to increase that by 30%. So on the next slide, you will see that we are 60% on grade level for reading and 51% in math. So we are about halfway there, halfway through the year. So can't complain about that. And this information will be duplicated on a later slide, but because this was part of my goal, I gave it its own slide. So. Okay, the next two slides are the projected proficiency MCAS. Along with Connor, this is a report that is new to me. So basically, I researched it while I was putting the slideshow together. And it does estimate how many students will achieve the proficient level on MCAS. Reading for MCAS for Mountain View is 39% is what's predicted. Last year, our MCAS proficiency was 36, so slight increase. The next slide shows math. Our math is predicted 49%. Last year, it was 39%. So we are moving in the right direction. I think we may not be moving as fast as we'd like because we're still dealing with COVID loss. Our third graders were in kindergarten when we shut down. We are also still getting used to our two brand new curriculums in reading and math. Luckily, I think the math might be a little bit higher right now because before illustrative math was a mandate, almost all of the Mountain View teachers piloted it the first year. So they are much more familiar with illustrative math than they may be with Wit and Wisdom at this point. I can also tell you that the math labs element was very well received by the teachers of Mountain View. And we've purchased all the materials that Connor and Renee mentioned, the vertical whiteboards. Another biggie, which is minor expense, so I wasn't upset to buy it, was the presenter brought little plastic boxes that had the marker and the eraser in it. And the teachers thought the kids would buy in more if they all had the little plastic box with the marker and the eraser. So we bought those and they love them. I've seen it used frequently at all grade levels. While I've been doing my mini observations, I've done 4 mini observations so far this year that I've documented. That doesn't count just walking around the building, which I try to do every day. I use the mini observation model for their unannounced observations. So far I've documented 54 for the year. But I'd love to see coming up either this year or next year would be some kind of professional development for Wit and Wisdom that was similar to the math labs that focus more on small group instruction. When we had our Wit and Wisdom training, we were training, pretty much whole school with Maple Shade. The math labs training, although we are working with Maple Shade at the same time, it's by grade level. And it's also half the grade level at a time, much more individualized, to the smaller group that they're with. So I'm hoping maybe that's something that's available that we could try to help more with the Wit and Wisdom curriculum.
I co-sign that request.
We did have each grade level complete literacy data dives in their common planning time around the end of January, beginning of February. We're really feeling confident now for the first time, probably in forever, or at least since I've been in East Longmeadow, in our phonics and phonemic awareness strengths with the students. The third grade teachers love Fundations. I think they probably wish we had it for the last 10 years because the kids are all like testing out of all of those areas on iReady and the other assessments that they give in third grade. And the fourth and fifth grade teachers are also noticing a huge difference. The biggest issue right now we're seeing is comprehension. The texts in Wit and Wisdom are very difficult. And so now that they're building their phonemic awareness and phonics and knowledge, hopefully it will get easier as we go along. But they are the readings are difficult. So the last 4 slides, this is where I said there was a repeat from my first data slide. This is the reading currently, which I already showed you. Last year, it was exactly the same in the year. And math, also same as last year, for the most part. Yeah. Put the air on.
Hey, doing? Anytime.
I think we have Birchland up next.
I blew my nose.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got like a head that I was,
Time you want.
oh my God. It hurts.
Yeah. We're done.
All right, good evening. We're ready, Gordon. I don't think we have much to say about this slide.
All right.
Okay, so,
You didn't want to just.
yeah, great drawing there we worked on for a long time. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about our attendance. You can see 94.9% average daily attendance, and the graph over there side comes from Panorama. So the green are our students that have attended 95% of the school year. The yellow is students have attended at least 85% of the school year, and the green is critical that have attended less than 85% of the school year. We had an amazing year for attendance by MCAS standards last year, and we were really strong in the fall. We have seen an uptick in absenteeism since the fall. I think you've already heard a lot of the reasons behind that. Is not uncommon to see this kind of thing happen this time of year. But of course, when we see it, we research it and see what we can do to take some corrective action. And something really interesting that we turned out when we were researching this is that our informal data shows that about 28 out of the 75 students that are showing up as on our chronically absent list, there's a mental health component involved. So it's almost 40% of the kids. So that comes a lot into the action steps that we're taking around that, is taking that information and saying, wow, that's pretty significant. What are we going to do now that we know this? For the next slide. All right, so our student intervention coordinator is continuing to reach out to families. We're lucky to have that position. So when we have a student that is absent 3 days in a quarter, whether they're consecutive or not, she coordinates with our school nurse and reaches out to the families right away to kind of get the story behind what's happening and see what we can do to support getting that student in school, which is a lot of where the informal data came about students with the mental health component of why they're missing school. Is from these conversations that she's been having with families. We're finding about students with school refusal due to anxiety, depression, a host of things that are going on in their lives that are preventing them from getting to school. We've been working with the district attendance specialist, the care coordinator on some of our cases, especially where there's a medical component involved. So we've reached out to her to help us out with getting people into the homes to do some tutoring, some testing, any kind of contact we can do to have something going on with the family and get that dialogue going, because it's a challenge in some of these cases. Taking into consideration the mental health component, we've expanded our relationship with River Valley Counseling. We've added 2 more days of counseling to try and help some of these kids who are struggling in school with whatever mental health component is holding them back. They can give us even more. We could use even more help from River Valley. We don't have enough space in the building to put them with all the kids that we have on the waiting list, but it's a big help to us, and we think it's going to help us improve our attendance the more we can get these kids the help that we need. Incentives has been a big part of what we're doing to try and drive attendance up. We've entered into partnerships with some of the local businesses to help us provide those incentives. We have some long-term stuff every quarter. Their kids got perfect attendance, and we have gift certificates that we give out to all of them. We have some short-term goals. We've had a dance recently, so kids that attended perfect attendance the 2 weeks leading up to the dance could get free tickets. We have plans that our student intervention coordinator has with independent students, individuals, I should say, around their specific circumstances, setting their goals, whether it be tardies or absences, working with those kids to try and give them some incentive to come to school. Smaller goals, because sometimes a whole quarter is a long time to think about, so we can talk about just this week. We make it every day this week, and we're getting a little traction that way as well. Of course, we're sending the letters out that you've heard about to families that are on track to be deemed chronically absent. It opens up a good line of communication with some families, and they realize, oh, wow, my student could be at risk of being held back because they've missed so many days of school. And a lot of times it is medically excused absences, but we are required by the state because they don't make that differentiation. And it's a good conversation to have with the families about what's going on and what we can do to support them, keep them on track academically, even if they have to miss school. Our MTSS team is working right now with some of these kids who are absent. We're also looking at some intersectionality along with our panorama data, so kids that check more than one box of concern. And we're assigning them a champion from our MTSS team. They kind of adopt one of these kids, they interview them, set up a student success plan with them with some very specific goals to their circumstances, and then they follow up with that child and kind of monitor that success plan and see how it's going. I would love to report to you on how well that's going, but our first time we're supposed to do that was the snow day. So we're meeting at 7:45 tomorrow to assign up our kids. You're welcome to come check that out. So we're hoping that that's going to be a big success for us. We've had success with that in the past, and we're looking to expand that this year. And then one thing we notice is we want to make sure all our absences are entered correctly. We have some students that are out in partial hospitalization or attending out of district placements, and they were being marked absent on our attendance because they were still showing up on the teachers' attendance rolls. So we're working on cleaning that up, and I'm sure that's going to improve our percentages as well.
Get that done before the March mission.
Yeah, we're already on that one. Yeah, we're on it.
Big help.
Yeah, okay, so the next slide for around teaching and learning, we're going to look at a lot of data because we love data. We look at it all the time. Big point we have here is the iReady winter diagnostic we most recently took. And we realize it's one data point, but of course we want to take any data that we have seriously and see what it tells us and how we can use it to drive some improvement. So these were our scores last year in reading. So at the same time, obviously, it's a different cohort of kids. And if you fast forward to this year, you can see the numbers are identical, similar percentages to last year. We are up 9% in students that are on grade level from the fall diagnostic, and we have 7% fewer in the fall diagnostic. So though it's similar to last year, it's a different cohort. We've seen improvement since the fall. Next one, you'll see the same thing for math. There we are, last year's numbers at this time, diagnostic. And then this year, again, the similar percentages, almost identical. Again, comparing to the fall, we're up 8% in students that are on grade level and down 4 students that are 3. So there is progress there, although it looks identical. Last year is a different cohort of kids. The next one. So we're talking about the progress towards our SMART goals. So from the district, we were looking to have 75% of students show typical growth in ELA and math, and 30% of the students demonstrate their stretch growth in iReady. So what are we looking at when we go to the winter diagnostic? How close are we to that goal? So if you ignore the median score, 108%, fantastic, can be a little misleading because it's kind of like, the middle score here doesn't really necessarily represent where we are at as a school. We kind of have a bit of a peak and valley. But for reading, we're actually looking pretty good. So halfway through the year, you see the part that we have highlighted in red there. All of our kids are well on their way to meeting that typical growth progress. If they're trying to get to 75% by the end of the year, they're well above a 38% here at the mid-year point. So that's really good. And same for stretch growth. We're above pace to where we should be at this time of year to meeting our stretch growth goals. So we're looking pretty good with the reading. We're pretty satisfied with those results with this goal. Right. And then if you look here, a little more reading data, we're seeing our biggest growth in our neediest kids, which is an indicator that our intervention programs are doing what they should. So our kids that are 3 or more grade levels below are showing the most growth, followed by our kids that are 2 or more grade levels below. So we're really putting our effort and our attention there. There was a lot of what we said we wanted to do at the start of the year, and it's starting to pay those dividends. You want to see, right? The math, it's a little bit different. We're struggling a little more in math, and I try and take into account that this is one data point. So our math teachers are working hard. Year 2 of their new curriculum. They're putting in some new things like math labs we're going to talk about. But we're not quite as far along as we were with the reading. We are close to our typical growth goals, and we're close to where we should be with our stretch growth goals. We're getting there, but we have some work to do, and it's going to drive a lot of the action steps that we're going to talk about in a moment. Our 8th grade's doing really well this year. I think that might have to do with some changes to our algebra program where we really narrowed it down. So we have more kids in pre-algebra instead of algebra, and I think they're more appropriately placed and they're doing a little bit better in math as a result. They're not in over their heads, but we'll see if the end of the year bears that out as well.
Mr. Page is agreeing with you.
Yeah. Okay, so, but again, our intervention programs, we're getting the best. They're our neediest is what we want to see. Kids are growing the most, difficult growth and their stretch growth. So our intervention programs are doing what they are supposed to do. All right, so a little more here, data, you can see some visuals. So for reading, we're looking really good. You want to be in that upper right quadrant where we have both high performance and high growth. Sixth graders are so good. They're 6th, 7th, and 8th. In math, we're all in the high performance, but only our 8th graders are demonstrating the high growth right now. I know our 7th and 6th grade groups are working really hard. They're still performing well, but we want to see a little more growth there, and it's going to drive some of the action steps that we're going to talk about. But that's a nice visual to see where we're at as well. Okay, here you've seen already the projected proficiency for MCAS. This is a new tool for iReady this year. We didn't have access to the past. This will be new for everybody. But you can see that in reading, if our students reach their typical growth, 56% of our students are projected to be meeting or exceeding expectations. We were 54% last year. So it's a slight increase. What we also want to show you is if we reach that stretch growth goal, which we are well on our way to doing, then that number will jump up to 66% of our students meeting or exceeding on MCAS. So that's fantastic. So we're well on our way to doing that. And I think that we're well on our way to meeting that 66%. So I will be thrilled if our MCAS data matches this at the end of the year. I guess we'll see. That's the big question of the day, but it's looking good right there in reading. For math, it's we're close. So if students reach typical growth, none of our students were exceeding. We were at 45% last year. We reach our stretch growth goals, that number will bump up to 52%. So we're hoping that the action steps we take are going to promote the growth towards that stretch goal, because we would much rather see 52% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations. So that's what we're looking for. It's within reach. All right, so what is this driving us to do? First bullet point is kind of a big one for me. This was a huge reflection moment. I put iReady reset meetings, covers a lot. So in the days leading up to our holiday break, just based on some observations I'd had being in classrooms, I started to interview some students and their parents and the teachers about kind of their perceptions and their assumptions about iReady. Now, we've been doing iReady for a number of years at Birchland. It's part of the fabric of what we're doing there. And I think part of it has become kind of routine, and we had lost a little bit of the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we set this time aside? We have half an hour twice a week that we do this. We expect students to reach certain goals. We do these diagnostics. Why are we doing this? Well, that's where Natalie and I come in, is to provide the why. So I started by communicating the importance of this to my families in the weekly updates. This is what we're getting out of the diagnostic. This is why it's important that they're doing their MyPath instruction each week. This is why. Started putting it out over my student morning announcements to students so they would understand the why. And when we came back in January from our holiday vacation, my staff was thrilled to have a staff meeting where I had an iReady reset meeting where I shared most of the data that I've just shared with you right here. I love that we have these tools that we can see what a projected MCAS proficiency is going to look like. So I wanted to lay that out there for them. This is what this is telling us. So if you think that this is not necessarily an accurate data point, okay, or you don't know what this means, well, this is why this is really important. Okay, we want to have engagement in this process with fidelity. We want accurate data, right? We want to know where we're going to end at the end of the year. And if you see these numbers right now and you're not satisfied with where they're at, what are we going to do to change it? Because business as usual is going to lead to the same results. So we had this big meeting. We laid out kind of some expectations because we were a little bit all over the place with what people expected when students were in their room with MyPath instruction. So we kind of laid out some very clear expectations for what we want to see in every classroom. What should be uniform? What are the expectations for what the students should be doing, whether they say they finished it or not? What should the teacher be doing? And Mr. Jung and I have been very cognizant of being present and visible during iReady time, to be in the room to reinforce these expectations with the kids so they don't give their teachers any pushback. Because for kids, it's become very routine. Sometimes they're going through the motions and we want to prompt them to do better. So we're pushing that. Incentives. We've always had an iReady raffle every week. We started pushing it a little bit more. We just had an iReady celebration, a pizza party for all our students that have passed the most lessons to let them know. We recognize that you guys are doing good work. And as we said earlier, I think Connor said kids like to be recognized when they're doing a good job. The other side of that, we've been sending letters to families for students that are not meeting the weekly expectation, that are not getting their 30 minutes and one lesson done in math and reading. We sent those letters out to open up those dialogue with families about, again, why it's important, what your student has in school to be able to support them with this, what they need to be able to do to catch up to where they need to be. It's the only way we're going to reach those stretch growth goals is if they're engaging with fidelity. We have a meeting on Friday. We're going to start looking at some professional development with Heather in-house to use MyPath data to drive some tier 1 improvements. So it shouldn't be substantially separate from what we're doing in math and reading. This is telling you that your students are struggling with this. How can we work this into what we're already doing in our units? So it's a big part of what we're doing going forward is just kind of resetting on iReady so that our data is going to be accurate and not somebody can say, oh, well, the kids didn't take this one seriously. We want it to be accurate and we want to see our projected numbers be those stretch growth goal numbers on MCAS in the end. So iReady reset meeting was hugely important. And I think we're already seeing dividends. You know, we're doing our learning walks. A lot of it is iReady time, going through and seeing what's going on in each classroom. And it's been looking good so far. All right, we have a few other points that Ms. Jung is going to talk about.
Yes. All right, so that has been going very well. One of the things that we're doing is really monitoring our intervention programs. So if you kind of refer to one of the previous slides around our neediest students for math as well as for reading, those students are showing tremendous growth. We've added the Orton Gillingham program in addition to the Wilson's Just Words program for the tiered reading, as well as a tier 3 math class. And so those students are responding very well to that, and it's showing on our iReady, and hopefully that projects in, on their MCAS scores as well. One thing we're really, really excited about is that we've been partnering with the high school. So shout out to Gary. Thank you. And also Kara Petrie, who have provided some National Honor Society students to serve as tutors to our students who have various needs in either reading or math. And so they've been coming to our school on Thursday. We have about 25 students participating right now, and they really are enjoying this time and they're benefiting from it. And it's just a wonderful time on both ends for both our students and our tutors. So that is going very well. We're also, like we've mentioned, the other principals have mentioned about the math labs. Those have also been going well. Our teachers have loved that. And we've had 2 PD sessions so far, one with the 6th grade and one with the 8th grade already. Teachers are already utilizing the materials like the boards and other strategies that they've been learning from those math labs, and really just trying to get the teachers to be able to engage students so that they can see how they're thinking, understand how they're thinking works, how it's more visible for them, and just really increasing the overall engagement. That's been going very well so far. Of course, our instructional coaches have been just a wonderful asset to our school. We talked about coaching cycles at the last session here with you all. That has been going very well. Again, right now it's pretty self-directed where the teachers are deciding where they need some support, and it's non-judgmental, it's not evaluative. So they are able to say, I need a little bit of support with my planning, or maybe you can watch me teach in this area and give me feedback, or give me some suggestions for this or for that. And they have been really, really responding well to it. A lot of the coaches have been sharing a lot of the iReady data, like we presented with you all, with the teachers so that they can dive deeper into that, showing them, those projections, what it looks like, what's from MCAS, based on where their students are now, what are some tools that they have at their disposal that they could use to reteach some lessons. And they're using this Atlas protocol to really kind of guide that conversation. So it's very structured, but it's more meaningful.
Yeah, it's kind of about avoiding the gut reaction and avoiding climbing the inference ladders, looking at things kind of detached. Right. What is the data showing us before we jump to, well, what does it mean and what steps we need to take? So we've been getting some really good feedback from that, and it's really slowed down teachers' thinking when talking about next steps and what changes we might need to make by avoiding that quick rush to judgment. We've been seeing some really good stuff come out of that.
Yeah, and this is our pilot year, so obviously we're taking our feedback. Every time the coach engages with a teacher, they take an exit survey, share, their feedback, how that went for them, what maybe they would like to see differently going forward. And so we're going to take all that information and really synthesize it and strengthen it for next year going forward, and also for some of the other teachers. Like right now we're working with the reading and math teachers, but we would like to also support our social studies and science teachers as well in the future. We're also really focusing on sharpening our tier 1 instruction. through the tool called iReady Mastery Checks. So typically teachers would use iReady Mastery Checks, which are like standards-based assessments, on-demand assessments. Students haven't seen the passage, haven't been prepped on it at all. Just to gauge where they are in regards to the standards that the teachers have been teaching. We've been doing them usually around 2 to 3 times a year, but we really want to move to integrating that more regularly, like at the end of each unit, in addition to whatever assessments that the teachers have already planned. And so typically what the teachers would do with the coaches, they would assign a mastery check. Then after that, that assessment goes out, then they would look at the data with the coach and kind of dive through that, see what meaning that they can take out of that and how that, how that relates to their teaching. Do they need to reteach or revisit something, or are they comfortable enough to move forward? But we want to make it a more regular practice. I think the teachers are getting a lot out of it, but I think we can really strengthen that area a little bit more. And finally, what we're really excited about is, our kids obviously are showing a lot of growth in iReady, and our numbers have really been growing more than ever in terms of the students who are testing out of iReady. And typically those students were just, okay, well, we don't have any more programs for you, any more assignments for you to do, so why don't you read independently or work on homework or something like that. Well, we are fortunate to have our coding teacher, Mrs. Suzanne Collins. She has a background in like TAG, talented and gifted work in the past. And so we reached out to her to see if she would be willing to put something together for those kids who have tested out of iReady so that they are continually being challenged, not just sitting there reading a book or finishing homework, just because they mastered the iReady. They still need to grow. They still need to be challenged. And so she put together a program for those students, and we're really, really excited about it. They meet twice a week, so during the enrichment block as well as during the iReady block with those students. And she's doing anything from logic problems, math counts, like really advanced math work. We used to have a math counts club. We don't have a club right now in session. No one is coordinating it, so she's using that curriculum in there. She does writing exercises, journaling, just all around.
Showed a
Yeah.
20-page short story.
Oh, yeah.
She was sharing with the
It's
rest of the
amazing.
class. And I checked in on them right before the break. So they're doing some fantastic stuff there. And again, it's giving those kids some meaningful work to keep pushing their thinking so they'll continue to grow.
Yes.
Even when they're not doing the MyPath instruction.
Yes. So that's where we are right now. I mean, we are making some strides, but we definitely have a long way to go still. Happy with what we're seeing, but we know, we have some deficits, especially around our math area. So we're really just trying to continue to utilize and monitor what we have already in place and keep bringing our heads together to come up with new ideas as our students, show what they need.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Finish off with the high school. Audrey.
No, I'm fine. I personally haven't, because I do track, but the math counseling was cool. I was a part of math counts in my middle school, and it's really good. Some of those problems I still.
So you were talking about that?
Yeah, my teacher ran it. It was like, if you showed up, you got like donuts. It incentivized me to do it, but it was actually really useful. And then it was like 6th and 7th grade, but then like in 8th grade, like a lot of the problems kept like recurring, and it's like I already knew how to do them, so it was really useful.
So I believe Gary's gonna start us off talking a little bit about the attendance. And it's gonna take us from there, and then I'm gonna bring us home. So
we are proud to assert a daily average attendance rate of 97 in the quarter through February 16th, which we've referenced the work of our attendance team, which I would argue is more of our reactive model that we're using. I think Audrey highlighted many of the things that we're trying to do that are impacting that, which is empowering our students through input and through voice. And so when we talk about surveying kids for the courses that they want to see added to our program of studies, and we talk about listening sessions that many of our staff members facilitated with large groups of kids. We talk about the assemblies where we're empowering our students with knowledge about the scheduling process. It's great to hear from a student's perspective that those things are making an impact, but you could feel just a little bit more energy among the student body right now. And I think it has a lot to do with some of those tangible things that we're doing. And it's more of a shift in the culture of really highlighting student voice above anything else. So the attendance team has been working reactively to monitor, student attendance and assign students to essentially a caseworker from the attendance team. And so they'll make more frequent check-ins with that student. To this point, we have 80 students on that list. And there's around 8 of us or so on that team. And so we're splitting those students up for additional check-ins and contact with home, setting targets for them that are above and beyond the 90% rate to try to get them really to close that gap and avoid that chronic absenteeism label. We can transition on to the next one.
Hey, I'm going to focus on child, utilizing the multi-tiered system of support to ensure that all students progress academically in their social, emotional, and behavior development. And when we first met in November, I was really happy to talk about the work that I'm doing with the 9th grade team. And that's really the focus of this as well. And that's just one of the structures that we put in place to help support students. And so obviously there's the information on the slide, but this was really put in place to help students transition from the middle school to the high school in a much smoother way than some of them had experienced in the past. The teachers are able to really get to know their students and to build relationships with them. And we can also include the interventions during the foundations block, which is built into the student schedule, who are part of that team. And of course, there are some students who are not part of that team who also have the foundations block. Foundations block is basically during the lunch block, which has also aided in the transition for our students who go to CTEC and need to come back to school. So they're not missing a core academic class. They're able to transition back during that block, which had been kind of a real tough thing in the past, because those students were missing instruction and they never really felt like they were catching up. So I feel like our 9th grade students who are also CTEC students being on the team was a really nice support to put in place. It also provides the core teachers common planning time with the special educators. The 9th grade guidance counselor attends the meetings. The common planning time is being used where we meet maybe 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the schedule. We can discuss student progress. We can discuss any concerns. We can talk about attendance. We can discuss making referrals to like the attendance team, or to make referrals for like River Valley Counseling if we feel that it's necessary. So it's been really good in terms of everybody being able to communicate during that block, and having that time during the day is kind of keeping people from having to go and meet on the fly. It also has really been good in terms of contacting parents and having parents come in and coordinating IEP and 504 meetings during that time instead of pulling people out of class. During that time, after we gave the first IXL diagnostic, that program comes with skill plans based on how the students scored on that initial benchmark assessment. And so students are able to work on those skill plans 2 to 3 times a week in foundations, depending on how they did when they initially tested. And those skill plans are personalized just for them based on the results. And, math was definitely an area where we had more students who needed the skill plans, but we still had a fair amount who needed the reading skill plan. And the hope, obviously, is that we're going to provide support and interventions early enough so that fewer students have concerns about not having enough credits to graduate in the future. Because that at-risk group, typically, those were the kids who really needed that extra support, but sometimes we kind of found out after the fact, and now we can actually target some of these things earlier. And also that hopefully fewer students are going to need interventions going into sophomore year. And I have to say that the Friday before vacation, our last block was the assembly about scheduling. And then we were able to segue into a celebration of all the good things that the freshmen are doing. And so, we recognize perfect attendance. We recognize no tardies to school, honor roll. And for the students who didn't meet any of that criteria, we also had an Above and Beyond Award and Striving for Success Award. So it was a really nice way to end the week and go into vacation. Everybody kind of felt really good about it. And so, you know, I have to say, one of the things that we're also going to do for a second year, which has helped, is communicating with families through the 8th grade night, which we're going to be doing in March. And we will also be letting people know about this approach based on students going into standard algebra as freshmen and being part of that cohort of students.
Is the foundations block, is there instruction in it, or are they just on the computers doing their iReady skills?
So the foundations block is actually, it's like a program for executive functioning skills, social skills, study skills. So students who don't need to do the IXL work on those lessons.
Okay.
So the students always have something to do in that block, whether they're doing their intervention work for reading or math, or they're working on like one of those foundations lessons.
Okay. So there's not a teacher that's teaching them if they're on the computer, right?
For the IXL. For the IXL, yes, that's on the computer, but the teachers are actually facilitating the lessons for the foundations.
Yeah, foundations class runs all year.
Mhm.
The intervention sessions are like, we've been identifying like 6-week windows where out of our 4-day rotation, they meet 3 out of 4 days. Over those 6 weeks, they'll have, for the kids who need that remediation and they have that skill work, they'll spend one of those days where they work on 2 skills during that time, which takes usually about half the time on math. And then on the other day, they'll do work on 2 skills on English. And the remainder of that time, the teacher will utilize for wherever we are within that ELHS Foundations curriculum. You know, so as Ann highlighted, there's an executive functioning component. There's some study skills components in there. The curriculum we use for the ELHS Foundations course is the SMARTS curriculum. And a lot of the lessons are derived from that.
How many students attending CTEC?
30. Started at 30. We're probably around 26 or so right now.
Yeah.
Similar number for the sophomores. So two pretty big.
30 in 9th grade.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Roughly.
Obviously, the high school schedule is different than the other buildings. How we have it built this year for the CTEC kids, because obviously they have that time where they return to the building as freshmen.
10:45.
Yeah, it's cutting into a portion of that block. So we have it built where their foundations block runs during that time. So if they're transitioning in 10 to 15 minutes late, it's a block that they're not missing from that core instruction time. You know, so if they have a little bit of that gap in time from when they're transitioning back to school, it's not impacting like they've been missing first 15 minutes of their algebra lesson,
which was last year,
which is what we were dealing with
last year. Yeah.
Last year, like that switch to that 4-year program for the freshmen. We had our own learning curves with that, which is why we aligned it this year to make sure that they were all transitioning back during that same time of that foundations block to make that transition back to the school more successful for them.
Over the last 2 to 3 years, CTEC has started to bring in more 9th graders.
Well, it's basically a requirement now. We can start in the sophomore.
Now DESE has made it that Voc Tech, that's a requirement that you're offering it 9 through. We had been a 10 through 12 school.
We would average 10 to 12 kids maybe per year. And once they added the 9th grade, we're up to close to 30. The last 2 years, we're close to 30.
Definitely having an impact.
During that same, actually longer than that time frame, we had been getting requests from 8th grade parents saying, how come 9th graders can't go over to CTEC?
So I am going to be asking to be on the agenda for the March 11th meeting to talk about the program of studies and some revisions there. One of the things I am going to be talking about is also some adjustments we need to make to our graduation requirements for our CTEC students who are now engaging in 4 years of programming. Because we're starting to see some shifts there in terms of things that we have to modify in order to make those things work. Because those kids used to have 4 additional courses that they could take at the high school during their freshman year when they were not going to CTEC, and now they are. So it's 4 less scheduling blocks that we can utilize towards graduation requirements. It was already tight.
Yeah.
So far, for the first 2 years, we've made that piece work, but we do have to talk through just some adjustments that we're going to have to make, which I think we can meet most of the things that we're already meeting, but obviously we have to keep you guys in the loop too.
Are there less juniors and seniors? Gary, you said there's.
Yes.
It's always, yeah.
It's 8 to 10, the seniors, I think we're 11 or 12 for the
Yeah.
juniors, and then it's a lot of sophomores. I think we held over 30 there. And then this year it was a bit smaller numbers. We're just above 25.
So
Students stop going junior, senior year?
no,
Not so much. It's just that once they opened it up to ninth grade, floodgates opened and everybody decided if you can do a 4-year path, there was large numbers of people who wanted to do it.
the collaborative also changed their application structure as well. They used to basically be allowed to deny kids. But the state said that was no law, that's not legal. So
If they have space, they have to accept.
they have space they have to accept, which all the districts around us increased their enrollment. So we basically triple our enrollment in every grade. So we're freshmen and sophomores are the ones where we saw that big jump. You know, so in the past, be 7, 8 kids per grade starting sophomore year. So the impact on the schedule was minimal, especially for the sophomores and seniors who had taken the second half of the day. So they wouldn't be coming back in building halfway through a block like they do now as freshmen. But now we're going to see 2 cohorts for freshmen and juniors who are going to be impacted. You know, so. Digression.
Yeah, right. A bad topic, does.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but
Great topic.
I am going to be talking about that in March, but it's good. That background is we are going to be talking about students, so we do have to make. So just to continue on the conversation of what Ann was talking about in regards to some of the intervention work that we're doing with our freshmen, and particularly with those kids who we've been working with on that freshman team. So we have started, give a little history for the year here. We started the year working with iReady and utilizing iReady as a diagnostic for 9th grade because they did add that diagnostic program in. We identified early in the year, prior to the year, to use IXL as the intervention tool for the kids who are scoring below grade level. The issue we had with iReady that other schools don't have is they don't have that skill work, those individualized lesson plans, those pathways for the kids. It's just a diagnostic. So we were taking the scores in this system and trying to match them up with the scores, the levels in this system, and trying to manually add those skills. And we were trying to do that for 70 kids who need that intervention work. It got clunky. As we were digging into IXL, there's a lot of things that we liked within that program because that does go all the way to calculus. So it's not like it's just a freshman program. Like you can utilize that for all different grade levels. I had an AP teacher reach out to me the other day and she was asking if she can potentially get licenses for her classes for English. So with that, it is something that it does have that high school pathway, which is something that we needed. So we could have that high school skill work as well. And they also have their own diagnostic tool, which we piloted in January with our algebra cohort, and our English 9 cohorts, just to see, if the information was giving us what we wanted in comparison to iReady. It was spot on in terms of the levels of the students that we saw in that fall, those fall iReady scores. So with, the scores being consistent, but also having, now the individualized skill and lesson work that we could do with the students who needed that remediation. We did request and received approval through Mr. Smith on use of IXL for everything going forward. So we did phase out iReady in January, and we shifted to using IXL for diagnostic for all the freshmen between the end of January and the beginning of February, because we did utilize the PD day to train our staff in that program. Obviously, they need to know how to use it before they actually administer the diagnostic. It is pretty straightforward, so they were able to jump right in. So what we have here in the system now, and what you see in terms of some of the scores, are the full grade 9 diagnostic scores by strand for all freshmen. So what you see here is a breakdown, and if you look at the bottom, it kind of gives you that bar chart of the different grade levels. We do see our freshmen based on the IXL data. In each of these different strands, we are a little bit below grade level, and using that foundations intervention time to dig into the kids who are below grade level. If you jump to the next slide for me. Smith. Using that intervention time to hit some of those kids where we see remediation, that need for mediation, similar to iReady. Any kid who is coded as yellow are the students who are one grade below grade level, and the rather the ones who are 2 grades below, 2 or more grades below grade level. So this strand that you have broken down here is our freshmen on algebra and algebraic thinking on the previous slide. So we get this pie chart, this breakdown by all 6 strands, ELA, which we'll jump to next. And within the program, we can click on those bar charts and get the breakdown of the students who need that help. And you also get a skill plan for each of those kids based on where their deficiencies might be. So we're utilizing that during, like in reference during the foundation times when they're working on 2 or more skills. But we also have our freshman algebra teacher and our freshman English teacher utilizing this program frequently in class as well to get those school-wide snapshots. They're using it as formative assessments, as quizzes to also get feedback on how the whole class is doing, where they might have to hone in on a class-wide skill that needs that remediation. So it's not just about that individual skill work, but it's also that class-wide area where they might need that reteaching. So you jump to the next one. So ELA, this is an area where we are doing better. We do see grade wide that they are at or above grade level as a cohort. But there are areas where we see deficiency. Obviously, grammar mechanics is an area where our freshmen need some work in order to get back up to grade level. If you jump to the next one, so just like we saw with the last pie graph, this is the reading level strand, and you have that breakdown of where our students are scoring. We have a significant number of testing above grade level, which is great, but we also still have those kids who need that intervention, where they're either 1 or more grades below grade level based on the IXL diagnostic. Jumping to the next one, this chart is looking to break down. I don't have those comparison scores to last year because obviously we didn't utilize this program last year. But you do have a snapshot of where the kids are standing as a cohort. I will say the data that you see here is freshman team heavy. That is the group that is utilizing the IXL program the most. So these are, out of those 40,000 questions answered, the majority of those kids are in that standard algebra class or that standard level 9 English class. So when you're looking at those, that current average, big chunk of those students coming, big percentage of these responses are coming from that cohort. I did run these numbers today just to kind of give you an idea of where the growth is. For the ELA, when you see it's at 895, so basically that means like they're at 8.95 when I ran this chart prior to break. Today we're up to 9.1, so we are seeing growth. And then on the math side, where it was at 7.8, we're at 8.1 today. So we are seeing that average monthly growth where it does talk about the 7% monthly growth. And we can jump to the next one. And the last one, so on the teaching and learning goal, we did focus in on, I think that's action step 2.3, which was all around, intervention work on the inclusive and supportive culture and climate goal. We focused on action step 3.2, which was developing authentic partnerships with students and families to elevate their voices in decision-making. So I'm sure you guys all got my emails about the breakdown of our student wellness data. With our fall survey, there was about a 10-point gap between these 2 questions. And our goal was to try to close that gap by making kids really just feel more connected to our community here through relationships, through the programming that we have. What is great is that 10-point gap is being closed to more of a 5-point gap, while we also saw an increase in that second question as well. So those 2 questions, sorry, I've got to put my glasses on. So that first one was just, I feel like I'm part of the community at my school. That was at 80% in the fall. That's up to 84% now. And then my school is inclusive of all backgrounds and identities. That was 88% in the fall. 89% now. So we're seeing a closing in that gap, which is what we want to see, where more kids feel included at the high school. But we're also seeing that increase in the school being viewed as an inclusive place, which is important to. So one thing we've been doing over the last couple of months is running some listening sessions. I think we met with over 200 students to just get their feedback on what they are seeing in this data in terms of student surveys. And it was just great to hear some of their responses. It's not necessarily just about the data points, but getting some of that anecdotal, that narrative information from them about what they're seeing and how they're feeling and how they're viewing their peers. So we are compiling that, and we're going to put some of that together. We're going to present that to our staff. And our hope is to try to take some concrete action steps based on what some of the kids are telling us and what they're seeing in some of the data. So.
I have a question for the learning. The ninth graders are taking the science MCAS.
Yes.
Have there been any supports or is there any space in that foundations class for anything to help them? Do they take the bio?
You take the biology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, is there anything in place for them to help them
So
with their skills? Science or
yeah, so the
classes?
The freshman biology teacher who's assigned to the team also does have the foundation block. Well, foundations blocks do run during the same time. Obviously, the exam is not till June, so we have a little bit of time here. But our plan and our hope is that as we're going, preparing for that test in June, we're going to utilize that time to reinforce skills. Things that they've been covering in there, use sample MCAS questions, talk through strategies. It's stuff that he's doing in his classes anyway.
Yeah.
But the hope is to also utilize some of that time where, yes, there is a curriculum connected to that work, but we also try to put in some flexibility for things like this, like the intervention work. So when you're preparing for tests like the high stakes tests like the MCAS, those students do get some of that reinforcement during that time. So.
And then for the 10th grade, for math and ELA, are there also any supports in place for them?
The structured supports like we have with the freshman team right now. So we don't have them built to the same level. Obviously we have, our teachers reviewed last year's MCAS data. They're using that to inform their instruction this year. We spend time every fall digging into that on both the math and the English side. Our plan is to build that second layer of support going into next year, though, where we have students right now. We have about 75 students attached to the freshman team. Going into next year, taking that same cohort and see which kids still might be low grade level in math and English, and identifying what we're going to call a team light, if you will, instead of having teachers, just not one English teacher who might have, say, 30 kids who are still tested. We have an idea of where those kids might be now. And they would continue to provide that support in a similar way for that sophomore cohort, with also layering in a MCAS preparation block. So we want to make sure that those kids get that reinforcement during their sophomore, make sure that they are successful.
In the fall, we'll attach an environmental science teacher for any student who fails biology this year. They'll be with her for that MCAS prep block in the fall. She'll transition to a new course in the spring.
Is there time in the schedule now for the 10th grade teachers to meet regularly, or is it just
So
school or PD day?
There's about one person that covers each of those.
yeah, we don't have that structure. So my focus always in common planning time is less on content. It's more on caseload and kids. It was a heavy lift this year, making sure that we had all these freshmen have a common group of teachers. Our plan is to do a similar thing next year, layering in that sophomore component with a smaller group.
Okay.
So right now, our hope is, like, with interventions, you want to ease kids off of those interventions. That's always the goal, right? Go from 75 down to a cohort of potentially around 30, where they will get that more intensive work during their sophomore year to make sure they're successful.
And those folks, yes, they would have
common.
right.
They would.
So we're aligning duty times for the meetings for the team, and then we're aligning prep times for the planning. So they do that on their own.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Appreciate everyone being here tonight.
I know.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
Like Wednesday,
What's that?
curriculum night on Wednesday.
Night.
You guys want to come? 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
That's brand new.
Yeah, first time. 6 o'clock.
Six, Frank?
It's an advertising, all the courses that they have. Before signing.
Oh, I'm at.
AP offerings, Catherine's requirements, scheduling process.
I'll see.
We need a break.
Stretch break.
Yes, no?
Oh, we're not done yet?
No, we're-
Just kidding, Pam. I know you're up next.
Let's move, go through it.
Let's keep moving.
Audrey, go.
I feel bad. Don't feel bad. Fine. I'm
Okay.
Go ahead.
You're over your expected time, so anytime at this point.
Speak out and no one minds.
Okay. We're gonna move along. We have discussion of the 2025 budget development once again.
Yes. In your packet is that same document that we've going from the beginning here. So at the last school committee meeting on February 5th, the school committee did vote to approve a 3.8% level services budget proposal, which is portrayed in the first line of that chapter 70 spreadsheet there. So I just want to remind you all of that. And what I do also want to make mention is that had I brought that decimal point out, it would actually be a 3.78% proposed increase.
Better.
Because the reason to know that's what I'm talking about, some of those potential possible positions for next year, I bring those out 2 digits. So I just wanted to make that. Okay. On the bottom of the page, we have the current FTE chart, which we talked a lot about at that last meeting. And I just want to remind everyone of where we're currently at right now with the different funding sources that we have and where those FTEs fall. And as you go to page 2, you'll see the FY25 FTE chart, which reflects transitioning some positions from the Title I and the ESSER 3 grant that we already spoke about. But again, I wanted to now put that into the chart so I've highlighted those, which were the middle section here of, and I'll just remind everyone, we transitioned the adaptive PE position from an employment at will FTE to a unit A FTE. So you'll see that first column there. That's the operating budget, and that didn't change at all as far as the 430 FTEs. But you will see that the unit A went up to 260 from 259, and the employment at will agreement went from 16 down to 50. So that's just stayed the same, though, the bottom line there. We also are moving 4 Title I paraprofessionals and a 0.3 Title I teacher to the preschool tuition revolving account. Moving 2 Title I paraprofessionals to the IDEA grant. So I added a new column for the IDEA grant to show you that. Moving 0.7 early childhood coordinator from ESSER 3 grant to the preschool tuition revolving account. And just as a reminder, these changes do not affect the operating budget. It's all, either the grants or the revolving account. And what you can make notice of is there is an overall reduction of 8 FTE positions because those were ESSER funded. And that's, been an ongoing discussion now for a couple of years, right? So we had the 5 permanent building subs and 3 paraprofessionals that are not being brought forward into FY25.
Are we gonna bring this chart forward to the council, Pam? Is that our plan or what?
Gordon always.
Certainly can. I'm going to be sharing this with the town manager tomorrow.
The only reason why I say is you're highlighted the blue ones. Maybe we could put in parentheses the former, just as easier to follow. So the 16 that went to 15.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I can, as you explained, I can look back, but
I know.
you know what I'm saying the change.
Sure.
Not only that there is a change, but it's down or up. Just
Yes,
you can follow.
Yeah, well, the 16 to 15.
Yeah, the employee will, right. So it was prior 16, now it'll be 15.
Right.
I don't know how you want to do it, but just like clarify that. But
Smith has
great chart.
words, so I'm sure.
You
Writes up a budget, narrative to bring forward. Because remember, my role behind the scenes is that I'm putting it all into Munis for the budget lines, and that's where then the town finance director takes that to run her reports, and then, go forward.
Okay, great.
I'll share this chart tomorrow with the town manager and make sure that we're documenting that piece. She's aware of where we've been, gotten here, how we're planning to move forward for next year.
And I'm sure he's plotting, so.
A couple of things that we know we're gonna have to look at as we're at this point next year or even earlier next year. We don't want to carry personnel if we don't need to on IDEA grant. I think we'll be in a decent position next year to do so. Circuit breaker strong. Mr. Fredette and Dr. Welsh actually came back, did a little consulting on circuit breaker, and we should be in good position again with circuit breaker. That we're submitting the claim. I think it's at the end of this month.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Working on it now.
So we should be in a good position next year, but we don't want to do that 2 years running where we're carrying personnel in IDEA.
What will be the recommendation then for next year? You're not saying fund it with circuit breaker.
No, the hope is Title I comes back.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
If Title I got cut, well, we were assuming that the
It should be
warning they
correction.
gave us is that it will be cut up to 160,000. And we think that it will return hopefully in the following year, hopefully, possibly by 160,000.
Yeah, great.
So at the bottom of the page there, I did put down the preschool tuition revolving account so that you could see like where I project we're going to be at the end of this fiscal year and how we are going to be able to pay for those positions next year with this account. But the reality is we are going to have the same conversation in a year when we're talking about FY 26 budget because it will not be able to sustain all of those positions. So again, sometimes it's hard to tell what those grants are going to do. But I just wanted to give you that fair warning that we will have to talk about it again next year.
Yeah, because it's more than 125.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
60.
We'll have to.
This was going to be a 1 year.
Yep.
It's like 280.
Fair.
So it's more than double revenue. Yeah.
Also, I mean, revenue can change, you know, there's a lot of.
Well, we're down in tuition in students, right?
Yeah.
This year, we're not
Yep.
capacity. Yeah.
Model.
So you'll see the revenue for this year, I put at $100,000. I was expecting it to be more like 130 to 140,000. So we are down there. But then next year I put it back up at, 125, being cautiously optimistic. I could bring it down, but again, it's a year from now, so it's a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then if we go to page 3, this is what we're calling the level 2 budget discussion. As you recall, at the last meeting on February 5th, we did bring forward the 2.5 FTE new positions, which again, the town is referring to this as level 2 budget discussion. We have the district-wide ELL 0.5 teacher. I wanted you all to know that if just that position was added, we would go to a 3.88%. Meadowbrook, there's a custodian, a full-time custodian. We've talked about the reasons why we need that position. Again, that would be a 3.91% if we were to just add that position. Meadowbrook, an adjustment counselor. I think you heard Ms. Lodi today talk about all those issues at that school. If that position was added, just that position, it would bring our budget proposal to 3.98%. And down the bottom, I wanted to let you know that if all 2.5 positions were brought forward, that would bring our request to 4.2% to the town council. I know you wanted, to talk further about it tonight and make it.
We didn't have these in any particular.
No particular order. Thank you.
The one that comes as a sort of a carry forward, if you will, from last year is the custodian, because we, over the last 2 years, have expanded the preschool quite a bit. But the other two are needs that have cropped up based on students.
Have you met with the town manager yet
I met with them informally once, and I'm meeting with them again tomorrow.
about this?
They are finishing up their level 1 discussions, so they have, similar to our forwarding our 3.78% level services. They've gotten that from each of the departments, and they're going through with each department that budget, and then they'll get to their level 2 discussions, which will deal with basically if the department's asking for anything in addition to level services. Tomorrow, I'll start the level 2 services discussion with them.
And would he be able to tell you more if this is realistic?
Realistic?
Yes.
So in the informal meeting we had, and granted, that was prior to many of his level 1 discussions, this didn't shock him.
I don't feel like it should shock anybody.
So,
I don't know.
Well, I think 4%, over 4% is moderately will be shocking to the council, I would say. if at all possible, to stay under 4% would be much more palatable,
I agree. I mean,
in my opinion.
but I don't know which one don't we need the most?
Is it our job to make it palatable?
Yes,
Okay, I'm
I think it is.
truly asking.
no, I know that,
As-
because it's our job to steer the ship, and if we don't get as much as we can without asking too much, then we're in the right spot.
Too much?
I think over 4 is too much.
But
My
take the
person,
number out.
no, the number is everything though.
But I'm asking you, is this too much? Take
2.5 FTEs this year is more than I wanted to add, specifically because of the new high school. That was mentioned by the council, that that's a reality, that, you know, the taxes are gonna increase. So I prefer to ask for no FTEs you know, optimally. However, there is a need. So the number does matter. The number will be the whole driving factor, I believe. And so I think 4 is a big hurdle, but I mean, not to say that we can't try.
It seems like this is just so minimal. I mean, there's probably 10 other ones that are needed within our schools, and this just seems so bottom kind of an ask from what the teachers and leadership team are saying that they need. I mean, how do we even I mean, we talked about this last meeting.
Yeah.
How do you even prioritize this? Like every single one of these things listed here is so needed. I totally understand your concern about the number, and you're so much better at all of that than I am. So I totally trust where you're going with that, but I don't even know how you prioritize.
No, I know.
It's so necessary to me. To be forward thinking, like, and the tax increase, I get it, like, it's impacting me too, just like it's impacting everyone at this table. But I don't know.
And additional FTEs are also important because we have a long-term liability for full-time employees of the town, and we currently can't fund our long-term liability, our OPEB liability that we have now. We're not funding it fully. So to keep adding full-time employees, personally, over the 15 years that I've done this, we've added a lot of employees, and we've taken some back, we've added some more, but
What's the long-term cost though? Let's say if we decide, for example, not to add an ELL teacher this year, isn't there like a long-term impact? Like, okay, so we choose to save that percentage
Educational.
point or, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then this population of students has grown 381.8% over 10 years. If we fail to, or if we have to contract out these services that may or may not be as high quality because you don't have the consistency of the educator that's working with them, et cetera, many of the reasons that might contribute to it not being as high quality. What are we then paying for down the road? So if these kids are 7 now and they're struggling ELL students, okay, we'll flash forward 10, into their high school years or something, and they're still struggling. I mean, I don't know. I just wonder what the long term, so not investing in something like this now, even though it might be a little bit of a pill to swallow, it's going to create more long-term issues for the students that we are not servicing as well as we could be.
yeah, no, I know.
But I get the numbers issue, obviously. So
Yeah. I know, and I agree with what you said, and there is a long-term impact. It is public education and there's limited resources. We're always up against that, but your argument is a real one. Yeah, I agree.
Is it worth trying to prioritize these? I know you can't because, being in a school every day, you know how everything's so important, but is it better to ask for something than it's not all free, but at least slowly?
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think?
I think the adjustment counselor, if we're gonna bring anything from this list forward, should be brought forward. I do think it's gonna be hard to find a half-time ELL teacher. I think that's gonna be challenging, and if we're looking to cover a half-time position, employee at will might be able
To do that.
to give us that kind of gap coverage if we need it. And I think we talked about last time too, that while not as palatable, overtime can also support with the needs of the custodians.
Custodian, I know, I thought there was some other kind of plan for the custodian. If
We
this
do a
didn't
lot
get
of overtime.
passed.
We, I think at Meadowbrook, we've exhausted them quite a bit with the overtime. So certainly we would have to sit with them and come up with a more creative plan, but they do.
Could we have
Quite a bit over.
custodians in any of the other buildings go there for overtime?
I mean, we could always look at that. The group that does the most overtime is the high school because they have the most events.
Mhm.
The challenge with that is that, you know, you're looking at weekends basically for overtime, bringing them back where it's not, because the shifts are the same, like they're all working.
I know, but maybe they would,
Flexing, like.
they would
flexing
want,
People over, if the
I don't
high
know.
school starting earlier, can we flex custodians over to Meadowbrook to support with that during the lunch block? Because maybe lunch is concluded at the high school.
but he's saying they need more support
Yeah.
on the weekend, right?
No, I was saying overtime would happen on the weekends.
Oh,
It'd be
okay.
Even catch-up work on some things would you'd have to let go during the week and have to catch it on the weekends.
Right.
That would be challenging only because your high school lunch runs basically 10:18 to about 12:10. Meadowbrook lunch runs somewhere, I think around like 11:45 to 1. I mean, you might,
They would
But-
offer
but who do you-
more, but
you really only have here 2 custodians through lunch. And then the rest of the custodians come on at 1:30 or 2. Yeah. And so what we'd have to do is say,
report.
can we have you report?
Report to
Yeah, would
Meadowbrook.
they be interested in doing that? Possibly.
I just think there might be more creative solutions to the top two,
Mhm.
whereas an adjustment counselor, to Amy's point around relationship building, full-time employee. The number of kids there, 600 students, 2 current counselors.
Mhm.
It's not easy, but if I had to prioritize one, I would say we bring forward the adjustment counselor.
I'd be okay with that.
That's just me.
Does that mean, so back to our EL students, would they still be getting services? Would that be in the budget if we just have to contract out, or they're just getting?
Yeah, so we have 3 ELL teachers currently. We'd be stretching their schedule really tightly. And so we'd be missing some of the recommended hours that we should be getting in. So we would have to look at how we contract that out, if that's possible. And then we could look into that and see how feasible that is. The other part that you could do, I suppose, you were talking about, pull in someone, maybe there's a retired ELL teacher that you pull in part-time.
Is any of that, I don't like this for little kids, but online programs that some kids uses, are those programs?
We can research all of that.
Yeah, like that too, to add, if they don't.
I mean, if we don't have to put them online
I know.
and actually have a
But
live instructor, that would be far better.
Right.
The ELL thing for me, like I'll be obviously deferential to what the committee wants as a whole, but the ELL thing, like we're sitting here saying we're committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We're having committee meetings, conversations, deep conversations, bringing in all sorts of representation. Let's, walk the walk here. That's ELL. That's totally walking the walk of DEI.
But I think that the adjustment counselor is too, like you're meeting the needs
Just don't know that you're gonna find some.
of all of these kids
We might not,
Yeah.
that have so many emotional issues.
without a doubt.
So, I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you may be prioritizing adjustment with ELL or ELL is a close second, possibly. Where does that, Pam, where does that put us if you did both?
That's what I'm doing right now.
It's another percent, so it's 4.8. Because it's 0.1% for that one right there. And it's a new FTE, it's a 1.5 FTEs.
Maybe we'll get a 0.5 ELL teachers,
Yeah, you're at
4%, 4%, I think we got 4.
no experience.
A bachelor's in.
That wants the.
What's the job?
technically, it's a 4.1.
4.1. Okay.
Yeah.
If you did.
That's big. I think it's very different. This year specifically.
And you want us to vote on this tonight for your conversation tomorrow, just so I'm clear?
So,
I think we should. I think we
if
should
you
get it
can,
ahead.
that'd be fine. I'm comfortable having the conversation, saying this is where we've gotten to. And you have the vote in March.
Kim asked, just putting that out there, the
I didn't have that
conversation I had
Okay.
with Kim about a month ago was that we did need more time, and she understood that we're the largest department in, town. And obviously things are different here. So I've, everything is in Munis right now with the 3.78%. And that we talked about the level 2, and we told her at this meeting that 26 decisions would be made, and I would go into Munis, and I had till the end of February. So I have just a couple of days to get her, because now they need to, and again, that doesn't mean conversations couldn't change, but that is what we spoke about. And Tom was in the room at the time when, because there's a process, right? They need to now get everything together and move it forward also.
He has to provide a draft budget, I think, by April 1st.
Well, so do we.
Or the first.
Ours goes with it,
Yeah,
unchanged.
right.
Yes.
So you could.
Change it.
No,
Before then.
You could, yeah, right, you could.
Right.
I would just want to give them a heads up either way.
Yeah.
But that would put us on the March, 11th?
11th.
That's a good
Yeah,
update.
which is, yeah. So this is where we think we are, given the percentages. We'll start updating Munis with the hopes.
So I'm out that week, just saying.
Munis.
That date, so I won't be able to go into Munis that week.
So
In the draft Munis page.
can we agree to put the custodian on hold? Are we there? At least?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm,
Good consensus on that?
Yes.
So what we're talking about, and do we agree that we want to potentially ask for the adjustment counselor? That's everybody's there.
I do.
Well,
Yeah.
so the question is the half. Really, that's the difference. What do you think, Gordon?
I mean, I like the idea of going for both, but I do understand, I think we have to do some more research. How realistic is the challenge of getting a 0.5 when the demand is out there and there will be 1.0 full time? Yeah, so that.
And why climb the hill to fight on the hill if we can't even fill the position?
Well, the other part of that research would be, what can I bring in here to support what our 3 teachers are doing?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And so I'll talk with Mr. Fredette and maybe Dr. Welch knows of some people, and Heather will be back tomorrow, and we'll start putting our heads together around that. Because I do think that we have to, I mean, that's an incredibly growing population, and you heard a lot of what our mid-cycle reports were talking about. We do have to walk the walk. A lot of the news stories are indicating that everybody's looking at how school systems are walking the walk, or if they're walking the walk.
can we also get the levels of those ELLs, of those MLL students too?
And their ages, because
Yeah.
those
Grades,
younger kids,
and-
it's like a language classroom, it's
Level they
different.
are.
Yeah.
Because if we see a
Yeah.
large number that are sitting at levels 4 and 5,
Right, that's a difference.
that's a different story of
Yeah.
what those 50.
They're ones and
students need
twos.
And what that balance is. Whereas if we see 48 are sitting at level 1 and 2, to your point, like,
Right.
then that's a very different caseload, and that's a very different skill set for whom we'd be hiring.
Right. Yep. Good point. Okay, we'll get that.
Okay. Does that give what you need for tomorrow?
No, we need to vote.
I mean, it gives me a good
No.
question. I'm not going to do the research with the town manager, but I will be able to speak to where I think we're going. And then certainly if you have a vote.
I know,
Be able to-
Pam needs to put it in. So can't we just put it in that we want both?
Well, I want us to go to the council and fight the fight that we want to fight, but I also want it to be winnable.
Yeah.
And
We don't have enough
five.
information right now.
But we do, because it's not up to the town manager. What we're looking for is the town manager's recommendation of our budget. So it's important that he's involved in the discussion, but what I don't want is the town manager to decide our budget, right? 2 different things. So if we feel that we can get the 2, then we'll go for the 2. I don't think we can.
But I think that we would also have a better argument, that information.
You didn't think we'd be at the high school either.
I always thought I would get to high school. I wouldn't have put all that time in if I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
But I think that we would have a better argument if we're like, we need this position because we have this many level ones.
Even for us to make a decision, it's totally different. Their proficiency levels, their ages, that says a lot. But I mean, obviously, if the teachers are saying they're drowning, but a lot of those recommendations.
So you
A lot of people are failing.
right now
Now
to
bring forward.
to
the
bring forward the
counselor,
adjustment counselor.
Yeah.
And
Wait and get that information.
get more information to see if you're even gonna add. Yeah, and then I can report that.
Gives you time.
And then that.
Or add it now and take it off if we decide. we don't.
That's true also.
That too.
Or add it now and take it off later.
That's absolutely.
I think
true.
that's what we
Should.
I'd rather do that, in fact, because we're not gonna be able to add it later.
Because then I'll.
Add it now.
The train's gonna leave the station if we.
All right,
Okay.
let's do that.
add it now. And then,
I'm not saying we're gonna
And
get
then
them.
March 11th.
I don't know either, but
Is it based on the new information?
I think the data is showing us that this population is going to continue to grow. So whatever level they happen to be at now, ones, twos, beyond, whatever, this is a hugely growing population, so we can at least be comfortable with that, I think. So it's not going anywhere. If anything, we'll end up adding to this in the future.
So I'm cool with that. I just want us to be aware going forward, next year, the year after, on the bottom line number of FTEs.
Yeah.
Because we continue to add full-time employees every year, and it's just difficult for the town to sustain that. So I'm okay if that's where we're gonna go. You've convinced me, so let's do it.
Okay.
Take a motion then, please.
All right, I move to bring forward a level 2 budget, district-wide ELL 0.5 FTE position and a Meadowbrook adjustment counselor as one full-time employee.
On top of level services, which we've already discussed, and which would bring us to a 4.08.
0.1.
4.08.
Yeah, 4.08. Yeah. So. Go out 2 decimals.
Yeah.
Yes.
0.08.
You're right, 4.08.
Is that your old motion,
Yes.
Sam?
Yep.
Motion made by Sarah,
second.
second by Antonella. Discussion. Any more? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. You'll enter that to me.
Yep.
That'll be our level 2 budget. You'll speak with Tom.
Yep.
Let us know his
Yep.
feedback
Okay.
and we'll go from there. Perfect. Good discussion. Thank you, Anthony.
The last item in the budget discussion was school choice revolving account. So we did have much discussion about those supplemental programs the last time around. And then we were asked, and those totaled $165,000. Then you asked us to bring forward some possible one-time expenditures to talk about for the school choice account. And so I have listed these here. Do you want me to state these? Okay.
Please.
Maple Shade indoor, outdoor recess supply replenishment for $3,000. Robot kits replenishment, $21,060. Laminator, $2,500. Replace antiquated shelving in the PE closet, that's $1,300. Total for Maple Shade is approximately $27,860. These are quotes. Mountain View, a stage curtain. We would also like to have a new intercom system speaker and the speakers, but we're waiting on the quote for that, so I don't have an amount for that.
That'll be substantial. That'll be.
I imagine that will be a good chunk of money, yes, so we would,
That.
I don't, I checked with Ryan, he met with the vendor on Tuesday, but he doesn't have any.
Our next meeting, maybe.
Perhaps, I won't be here, Gordon could bring that.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as we get anything, we can bring
Okay.
it forward. Meadowbrook, 5 large wooden dividing shelves cabinets, $6,500. She would also, as she spoke, repair existing playground, which we're working on trying to get a vendor in there to take a look. So the total one-time expenditures, excluding those that we're waiting on quotes, $42,860. If you add that to the $165,000 for the supplemental programs, that's $207,860. And so I put the school choice revolving account there at the end, so you could see we do have a substantial, very healthy balance there, which we knew we would. This district did not have school choice for 15 years, so it's new to us. And so now we've built some up so that we can do these things for the district. So again, I wanted to just show you what it would look like for next year if we did use those funds that we just talked about. And again, that's excluding the ones that we're waiting on quotes.
Could be another 60-ish.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
so it's a
Yeah.
big number
Mhm.
more. So if everybody's good with that, I would, well,
I was gonna ask, are we waiting to do it all as one
No,
or
let's
we're
do
just
them now.
assuming?
I would
do the 207,
to do that.
she gets the 60
Yeah.
or whatever. the-
As we get that information. Great.
All right.
We can do that allocation anytime. This is,
You want me to wait to do this till next year? Or can I?
no, do it.
Now, okay.
This is just for our discussion in the budget process. We want to be
Yes.
able to talk about it. So
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And now you have a much more concrete plan for school choice money.
Mhm.
It's going back to students and schools.
for things that we'll never fund
Never fund
otherwise.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
I just know if we were waiting for the quotes to do it all at
Let's do
once,
that.
or just doing this and then.
We'll do this and then we'll do that.
I would like to just make mention that the high school, and so notice high school and Birchland Park were not here. I did ask each of the principals to be thinking, I asked them a little late, so that was my fault. Then with the school vacation, so I just chose not to put anything on here. I thought we should come back if they came up with some, ideas.
If they do, the next meeting will be
Yes.
best. Okay.
Absolutely.
Move to approve the one-time expenditures as presented to be funded by the school district's revolving account in the amount of well, that includes.
Yeah.
Separate?
No,
Grand total.
not the whole thing, the 207.
Yeah.
All right, so then it's
And it's an
sub,
approximate, is
the
approximate.
one-time expenditures.
What do you want for a number? I'd like to give you a number.
Yeah.
Do you want a different number than that?
Just use that number.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can revisit. Yeah.
So then we're really moving to approve the supplemental programs and the one-time expenditures
Yep.
to be funded by the school choice revolving account in total of $207,860.
Motion made by Sarah.
Second.
Second by Kate. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I get out of here? Are you all right? I leave now?
Sure.
I have my daughter's banquet started.
I gotta leave now too.
You really?
I'll go fast.
Sarah's got it.
I got them. Go ahead.
Audrey's leaving too.
I feel bad.
Don't feel
What do you feel bad?
We don't
Working.
feel bad. We don't feel
Got
bad.
this.
You're good.
Thank you.
I don't want to be the only have to leave early.
You're not.
Just go over the important stuff.
You're good.
I mean, you've heard most of,
I know.
as you've had the,
Yeah.
Hi, Greg. Thank you.
the presentations by the schools, basically mirrors a lot of alignment cycle evidence. Big things that Connor alluded to, we are working with the Center for Leadership, Educational Leadership and Equity, I'm sorry, my brain is mush. Center for Leadership and Educational Equity, CLE. And in their Equity Leadership Accelerator program, it's a 2-year grant-funded program. And that's been really good because we're getting both individual coaching and then group collaborative discussions. And it has centered on not so much the focus, say, of what Ms. Lodi was talking about in terms of, are they implementing the curriculum? That's what we had in our learning walks anyway. This now gets down as we look at the data into some of the things Mr. Martin was talking about regarding, do we have subgroups? And it can be some of the DESE subgroups if you want. It can be your special ed students. It can be low income students. It can be some of the ones that we consistently see in the reporting, or some of the subgroups that DESE also breaks out, but we don't discuss as much. And Mr. Martin was talking about it, as they were talking, their Hispanic students are showing a real decline in math achievement. And so looking at that and what, one step he took was the empathy interviews, but they're also discussing that, starting to discuss that data with grade level teachers and so forth as they get into discussions. And so that's been helpful. It's also building leadership skills. Not only are we talking about them as a full leadership team, but then individually, hopefully people are feeling more comfortable asking questions that maybe they're not going to ask in a group of. So that's been going well. Districts around us that are involved in it are West Springfield, Long Meadow, and then it has a variety of districts from throughout the state. So we have at least 3 or 4 larger group meetings where we're paired up. Those districts are involved in the meeting, and then you break out into subgroups. So that's something that I wanted to highlight. As we go through this, certainly I've taken on many of the goals that you've heard, actually all of the goals that you heard expressed. And individually, one of the things that I put in terms of practice goals, obviously, was guiding the district through the feasibility study, which thankfully we have gone through, and now we're in the construction phase, which brings on new challenges, and then also doing something that will continue tomorrow, which is building relationship with the town manager and other department heads. Recently, I was added to the focus group for implementing the strategic plan at the EL library. It's exciting. Good way to spend Saturday, couple Saturdays. So continue the connection in town, which I think is so important, especially given how supportive they are, not only of our budget each year, but the fact of how they turned out at the polls for the new high school. Yeah. What I will do is, I'm certainly happy to sit with any and all of you to go through this more in depth if you would like individually, but I'll also build those evidence folders and I'll put them in the shared file for everyone so that between now and next meeting, you have those to look at, you can ask questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Of interest?
Yes, so in your packet, you have the very formulaic statement of interest that basically you have to write within the. And so I just wanted to make sure that all of you had a copy of it. And if there, I know it's not the most exciting read, but if there was anything, if you had a chance to peruse it, that you felt should be added regarding Maple Shade and specifically the roof. What it does is it walks you through some of their sort of basic premises. Why are you looking for this now? What priorities does it meet? And then the biggest thing for the Mass School Building Authority is that we have a preventative maintenance program and that we've tried and invested in doing things ourselves, all of which we have. And I think I've documented here. And I have to really applaud the Department of Public Works and specifically the Superintendent of Public Works, Mr. Fenney. If you, I don't know if, well, you wouldn't have had a chance because you have a paper copy, but the spreadsheet that I attached to this, which he's just calling his equipment and inspection spreadsheet, it's massive. It's far more. That's why I figured I could include it. And they're calling it a focal or a facility coordination index. And I think it does represent that. And so he does a fantastic job. And so I was able to use that as one example that I attached.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people have questions on this.
I'm glad to see the project's moving
I know.
forward.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow I'll also bring this to town manager's attention because Mr. Thompson, town manager and I will have to sign this electronically. And so if everybody's comfortable with the draft, then we will go forward with that and start getting it submitted.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Last two things are, one, we need someone to be the school committee representative for the ELPS food services negotiations.
What is that exactly?
So we have currently we have 2 units that are up for a new contract starting in September. One is our teachers union in negotiations now, and the next one will be our food services group. So we just need one school committee representative to work with Pam and me and Lori Paul as the district side, and then we work with their negotiations team to move through and hopefully to a new contract agreement. Generally, we're meeting
It's usually pretty quick.
3:30 in the afternoon, on whatever afternoon is convenient for everyone, and then it usually goes pretty quickly.
Right.
They're a very good group. There's not a lot to their contract, so.
I'm happy to do this.
Yeah. All right.
We need a motion for that or no?
It helps. Yeah.
Okay.
I move to appoint Amy Delenta as the school committee representative for negotiations with the ELPS Food Services.
Okay, motion made by Kate,
Second.
second by Antonella. Any further discussion? Thank you, Amy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and that motion carries 4-0.
Okay. Thank you all, and thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Well, they were looking probably late March to start.
Okay.
So we'll sit with Lori Paul, get our information set, and then we'll pick some dates.
Okay.
All right, thanks. And then the last item is another waiver. We did a 7th and 8th grade waiver last year to keep a JV team running for softball.
Correct.
We think we're probably going to have to at least do that this year, but in talking with Mr. McGee, he's actually asking for 2 waivers. That waiver to be renewed. So we would okay 7th and 8th grade students to play on the JV team. And should we fall short of the 15 students that MIAA recommends for a varsity team, that we allow 8th grade students to possibly fill the slots.
Varsity?
15.
Where are all the kids? Where are they
So-
playing on like?
Sorry, that's a great question. What I asked Mr. McGee about that, so softball seems to be down. But what he did say was that lacrosse, track, and tennis are very healthy.
Okay.
So,
Maybe that's-
and the 7th and 8th grade group that's playing softball seems to be very numerous. So last year we had a number of students that took us up on the chance to play for the JV team. We probably will again. We're hoping that we don't have to use any 8th grade students on varsity, that strictly is JV, so we can run a JV team. But right now we're looking at 13 people who said they'd be interested in coming back out.
All right.
Would 9th through 12th graders wouldn't be cut?
No, you
For
can, if you have,
graders.
you cannot displace a 9 through 12.
That's what I just want
Yeah.
to be clear, like on that.
MIA rules are such that you cannot displace a 9
Okay.
through 12 player. Even if you voted the waiver in, we couldn't do that.
Okay.
So any 9 through 12 player that wants to come out.
And are there any like additional conflicts? Like, are there more? I know like the kids played like last year on the JV. Are there more practices or anything else that when we think about a varsity schedule?
Generally, your varsity and your JV team practice for the most part
Okay.
the same time over at Birchland. Yeah, but you're right. There may be more varsity scrimmages. There may be times where varsity sneaks in a extra practice.
And would
JVs.
families of 8th graders ultimately have the decision on whether or not they want their child to participate?
Oh, absolutely.
After they
Yeah,
say
they, once they know the schedule, if they choose not to, yeah. Or they can say, I'd like them just to participate on the JV team.
Okay. All right.
We're not trying to force this. It's just.
No. I just want to make
opportunity.
sure,
Yeah.
because this is a very,
No,
I don't know that we've approved
We've never.
any 8th graders
We've
being
never
on
taken-
varsity.
With the exception of skiing, we've never had 8th graders go to the varsity.
Okay, I just know I haven't done it before, so I wanted to make sure.
Yep. No.
So then we want one waiver that allows 7th and 8th graders to play on JV,
Mhm.
and a separate waiver that allows 8th graders to play in varsity.
Should we remain under that 15,
Okay, so that's 2 separate motions.
2 separate motions, right?
They want to tackle that?
So I move to approve the 8th grade waiver to help build varsity softball team roster. If they fall under how many? Sorry.
15.
15 players.
Okay, motion made by Kate,
Second.
second by Antonella. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nay, motion carries 4-0. And then one more.
And then I move to approve the MIAA seventh and eighth grade waiver to allow middle school students to participate on the JV softball team.
Motion made by Kate.
Second.
Second by Antonella. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed nay, and that motion also carries 4-0.
I'll let Mr. know. He would have been here tonight, but we have a hockey playoff game. Yeah, so that's exciting.
Cool. Right, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you, Don. Thank you to the leadership team for coming and our student representative and everyone for sticking with us for almost 3 hours. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Still moved.
Motion made by Antonella. Second by Amy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.